Story 1. For a very long time. I have always known that my parents love my older sister Vicky more than me. She was the planned child while I was the result of an accidental pregnancy. Just 10 months later, they probably didn't even want me, but decided to keep the pregnancy anyway. My mother's parents had passed away before I was even born, but my dad's parents were very much alive, so they took on a significant role in my upbringing. Grandma and grandpa were the constants in my life, providing the love and support that I often felt lacking from my own parents. I remember so many instances when my parents would leave me behind with my grandparents and only take my sister for trips. When I was young, I didn't mind because it was fun living with my grandparents. But as I started to grow up, like when I was 6 or 7 years old, I realized just how unfair this was. But my problem wasn't just with my parents. It was also with my sister, Vicky. While I harbored no ill will towards Vicky, I couldn't help but feel like an unwanted addition to the family. She knew that as well and made me feel like a stranger every day in my own home. She would always compete with me for everything, be it about grades, attention from our parents, or even the smallest accomplishments. It felt like a constant battle for validation, and I was always on the losing end because my parents preferred to always. As a result, I would feel really inferior and we never quite saw eye to eye. Our relationship seemed more like a perpetual contest, with her consistently coming out on top. On one occasion, she wanted to be friends with a group of girls, but because she was nerdy, she was afraid to approach them. One of the girls and I had art classes today, so she introduced me to the rest of the group, and we all would hang out together. Vicky was so jealous of this that she made my parents talk to me about including, also whenever I was hanging out with them. I tried to fight, but my mother called me selfish while my dad said she was my sister and I should look after her. Begrudgingly, I agreed and introduced Vicky to the rest of the girls. Now, Vicky doesn't really have a lot of friends, so she can come off as overenthusiastic. So she would constantly try to impress the girls in our group, often coming across as intrusive. Despite her efforts, she struggled to find her place among them, and the awkward tension between Vicky and the other girls was always palpable. For example, one of the girls had a crush on a guy, so Vicky took it upon herself to approach the guy and let him know that the girl liked him. He laughed because he was not interested, and went and told everyone about it, which embarrassed the girl. After this, the girls told me very firmly that they didn't want me to bring Vicky with me to our hangouts, so I agreed. However, Vicky wasn't having it. She threw a tantrum when she found out that the girls wanted nothing to do with her and went to our parents insisting that I should not hang out with these mean girls either, since I was her sister and I should stand up for her. I refused and told her that it was her own fault, that they didn't want to be friends with her. But my parents, as usual, supported her. They lectured me about how Vicky had no ill intentions and that I should try to convince the girls to forgive Vicky. But if they didn't, then I should cut them off also. I refused and put my foot down. I liked hanging out with them, and unlike Vicky, I wasn't going to jeopardize my friendship in any way. I told my parents that I had enough, and it wasn't up to me to find friends for Vicky. My parents were pissed and gave me the silent treatment for weeks, but I'm glad I stuck to my guns. This group of girls has continued to be my friends till today, and are basically like my sisters. I have cried with them, laughed with them, shared some of the most meaningful moments of my life. However, at that time it was really hard for me to stand firm in my decision. There were moments when doubt crept in, when I questioned whether I had made the right choice in prioritizing my own happiness over what they wanted. This was not the only reason Vicky grew to hate me. There was also another incident of a boy. She had a crush on a guy and I have no idea about him. He and I would sit together for some classes because we were friends. He tried to ask me out for junior prom, but I declined politely, since I was already going with someone I liked. Later, when Vicky found out, she made a hue and cry about it, telling my parents how I always take things she wants, and that I was knowingly flirting with the guy for months. She called me a bunch of nasty words, which no one should say to their own sister, and told my parents how she wished I was not her sister. My mother sided with her, telling me how it was wrong of me, and that as a sister, I should respect girls' code. I tried telling them that I wasn't even interested in the guy and had declined his invitation, so she was free to ask him if she wanted, but Vicky refused to let it go. Looking back, I think she knew the guy would have rejected her anyway, so she just wanted to take her frustration out on me, since he asked me instead of her. Once my dad took me out for ice cream, telling me that he wanted to spend some father-daughter time with me now. This never happened, so I was really pleased. However, he started asking me a bunch of questions like if me and my boyfriend were being careful, if my boyfriend came from a good family, or if my boyfriend and I ever did drugs. I was taken aback by his line of questioning and asked him what he meant by all this. This is when my dad revealed that Vicky had been making up stories and telling my parents for months that I was doing drugs and drinking alcohol with my boyfriend. This was a complete lie, and I showed my dad my phone for him to verify that Vicky was lying. Later, when my dad confronted her about all the lies, she tried to justify that no one our age just hangs out with a guy and that I was hiding things from everyone. I was so pissed that I yelled at her for trying to make unnecessary drama and told her that it wasn't my fault that she had no one to date, but that she needed to keep her nose out of my business. Vicky didn't like it and punched me. This happened out of nowhere since he had never been physically violent before. My nose started bleeding as I fell down on the ground, clutching my face in pain. My parents rushed me to the emergency room, and all the while they were pleading with me to not file a police complaint against Vicky. They kept saying how it would ruin her life while I was sitting in the back seat clutching my face. Vicky didn't even care, nor did she apologize. Later, when the nurse asked me about the incident, I told her the truth and she called CPS. My parents were furious with me for involving CPS, viewing it as a betrayal of family loyalty in their eyes. Vicky's actions were dismissed as a mere accident, an isolated incident that should not warrant such drastic intervention. They pleaded with the authorities, insisting that Vicky was not a danger to me and that her actions were out of character. In the end, Vicky was let go, but they warned my parents that they would keep a close eye on our situation in case any other accident happened with me. As you can imagine, Vicky was really shaken up, and so were my parents. Later on, my parents told me that they were disappointed in me for trying to ruin my sister's life. My mother started to cry and told me how I was tearing the family apart by involving outsiders. My father's disappointment was palpable, his words heavy with reproach as he questioned my decision to escalate the situation. I told him firmly that I wanted Vicky out of my life, and they agreed. I did feel guilty involving the authorities, but for the first time I felt safe at my own house. Once Vicky had been formally warned, my parents had a separate conversation with her, and since that day she stopped talking to me altogether. I very much prefer this over her, constantly hovering around me or trying to insert herself into my life. When my grandparents found out about this incident, they asked me to pack my bag so I could live with them for the remainder of high school. They informed my parents, who did not protest much, so I left to live with my grandparents. Unlike my parents' place, I felt safe and loved here. The remaining days of high school went well, and I made lasting memories with my friends. My parents never once visited me or called me throughout all that time. I knew they were happy with their beloved daughter, and so I never tried to contact them, even though it hurt me that they could so easily discard me like I was nothing. When I was graduating high school, my parents only showed up to cheer for Vicky. They didn't even congratulate me or approached me, and it felt like I was just a stranger to them. However, my grandparents were there and scolded my parents for being so blatantly obvious about their favoritism. I don't know what my grandfather told them, but my dad later approached me awkwardly and congratulated me. Later, I found out that I was accepted into a good college with a full scholarship. I was so happy about it because I was dreading asking my parents for any financial help. I informed my grandparents about this, and they offered to take me out to a nice restaurant for dinner after dinner. My grandmother posted pictures of me on her Facebook account, writing a long caption about how proud she was of me for being such an exceptional student. Our relatives soon found out about it, and they chimed in, congratulating me. I guess some of them might have reached out to my parents, who had no idea about all this. Instead of feeling happy about it, my mother called to tell me the next day that Vicky had locked herself in her room crying because she had not been accepted yet by any college. And I was knowingly trying to make my sister feel bad about her grades by talking to all our relatives. She told me how this was all my fault because Vicky was apparently depressed after the CPS incident, and I had pushed her into bad grades. I was so unbelievably heartbroken that my own mother could blame me for such a thing that it was the last time I ever talked with her for a very long time. My grandparents helped me move into my college dorm due to my high school boyfriend's college being far away from me. We had broken up, so I went into college, single and ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, with newfound independence and determination to break up had been difficult, but I was excited to meet new people. This is where I met Rob. He and I were both freshmen, and we both spent half of our days in the library. Rob was unlike anyone I had ever met before. His quiet demeanor and studio nature mirrored my own, and we quickly found common ground in our shared love for academia. As the weeks turned into months, our friendship blossomed into something deeper, and I realized that I had developed feelings for Rob that went beyond mere friendship. Being an extrovert, I was quite upfront about my feelings for Rob, and I was surprised to know that he felt the same way. We started going out and have been going 8 years strong. My grandparents have met Rob, and they absolutely adore him. I have met Rob's parents, who literally treat me like their own daughter. On occasion, Rob's mother has even confessed to me how she has always wanted a daughter. so she is glad that Rob met a wonderful person like me. To be honest, this is the first time I have been surrounded by family members who like me and don't actually resent me. I have told Rob stories of my childhood growing up, and he listens to me with empathy and understanding throughout these last 8 years. My parents have hardly contacted me except to send me an occasional birthday text if they remembered, but that is it. Recently, Rob and I got engaged. He proposed to me while we were trekking to our usual spot to watch the sunrise. And it was a dreamy proposal. It was so sweet. How nervous he was to pop the question to me. And I had no doubts in my mind when I accepted the proposal. I posted pictures of my engagement on my Instagram and also informed my grandparents about this. They were so happy for me and congratulated us on our future. I guess the news must have spread because my parents called me out of the blue to congratulate me as well. I thought it was just a casual conversation since we had not talked for years. They asked me about my life, my job, my apartment, before my dad asked straightforwardly if he could walk me down the aisle. I was taken aback by his sudden question, since just a few moments ago, he didn't even have an idea about which company I worked in. I told him that I had not thought about it yet. My dad told me how it would be embarrassing if I didn't ask him, and others would question us about it. So it's better if he walked me down the aisle. I scoffed and told my parents I didn't even know if I was going to be inviting them to my wedding, since we had not been in contact. But this pissed my parents off. My mother started to tell me how disappointed she was by my response, emphasizing the importance of family and tradition. She went on to tell me how they would always be my parents no matter what, and that I should let bygones be bygones. Part of me was tempted to listen to my parents and accept my dad's offer because I did want our relationship to be mended. But another part of me hesitated, wary of opening myself up to potential disappointment and hurt again. However, I was going to be entering a new chapter of my life in the few months. So I told my dad that he could walk me down the aisle, and he seemed overjoyed. Now, during the wedding planning, I reached out to my high school girlfriends who I had always stayed in touch with, despite the physical distance that had grown between us due to our careers. I told them how I wanted the gang back together and that I wanted them to be my bridesmaids. There were a lot of happy tears and congratulations. And without hesitation, they accepted my invitation to be part of my bridal party. Embracing the opportunity to reunite and celebrate this milestone in our lives together, we all planned to go to Vegas to celebrate my bachelorette party, while Rob had a separate bachelorette party with his friends as well. My friends and I posted a bunch of pictures from the party, and overall everyone had a lot of fun. However, when I came back home, my parents called me to let me know how disappointed they were that I had not invited Vicky to be a part of the celebration. I told them that there was no way that I would have involved Vicky in my bachelorette party and that I didn't want it to be a part of my life. This took my parents by surprise and they asked me what I meant. So I clarified that Vicky's actions, particularly her history of deceit and betrayal, had left me deeply wounded and mistrustful of her intentions. I couldn't fathom inviting her to such an intimate and joyous occasion as my bachelorette party, knowing that her presence would only cast a shadow over the festivities. I also informed my parents that this was also why she was not invited to my wedding. Hearing this, my parents lost it. They went off about how I had no right to exclude my sister from my wedding, and how it was my duty as her sister to include her in such important events. They told me that Vicky had been looking forward to meeting me after she found out that I was getting married. I was confused, and I asked my parents what gave her that idea, since we had not even talked to each other for such a very long time. But my parents brushed my concerns aside, saying, "This is not how sisters behaved with each other. I understand where you're coming from," I told them. "But you have to understand that my relationship with Vicky is complicated. After everything that's happened, I just don't feel comfortable having her be a part of my wedding. She has not even once apologized to me for everything she put me through." However, my parents, as usual, ignored my words. My mother kept saying how she wanted what was best for the family and that inviting Vicky wasn't a big deal anyway. My dad insisted that our relative would talk about why my sister wasn't invited, and this would cast a negative light on my wedding. However, I knew better than to yield to their demands, so I did not relent to them. I told them that I was okay with people talking behind my back and questioning my character, as long as I was surrounded by people I liked and trusted during my wedding. My mother then asked if my fiancé would be okay with this, and went on to tell me how my in-laws were going to judge me for being so unbelievably cruel as to exclude my own sister from my wedding. I laughed and informed my parents that my fiancé and in-laws knew about my family dynamics, and none of them would even care if Vicky was present or not. They urged me to reconsider, emphasizing the importance of family unity and forgiveness, but I remained steadfast in my resolve, unwilling to compromise my own sense of well-being for the sake of appeasing others. In the end, we agreed to disagree. each of us holding on to our own perspectives, and my parents told me how they needed to think things over, and we ended our conversation there. I didn't inform my grandparents about this as I felt a bit guilty for standing up to my parents, and they completely have my back. My grandparents told me that I should not force myself to invite anyone I didn't want there, and that my parents were, as usual, trying to guilt trip me. Since this conversation, I have been feeling a bit better about my decision and got distracted with my wedding planning. Since my wedding is fast approaching, last week my dad called me to let me know that he had fought long and hard and that he and mom would no longer be attending the wedding. Before I could even react, he went on to say that this also meant that he would not be walking me down the aisle. I asked him if there was a specific reason why, and he informed me that Vicky was going to be moving to a new place soon, which my parents had helped her find. And since I was going to be excluding her from the wedding, she had decided to host a housewarming party that same day. So they would be attending that instead of my wedding. I felt a mix of shock and disbelief wash over me as I processed my father's words. The realization that my own sister's housewarming party took precedence over my wedding was a bitter pill to swallow, exacerbating the sense of hurt and betrayal that I'd always felt for years. I simply told him that I understood, and I hung up the call. Although I tried to act brave in front of my dad, deep down, the pain of rejection cut deeper than words could express. When I informed Rob, he was furious about how insensitive my parents could be after they were the ones who had insisted on being invited. He was the one who gave me the idea that I should ask my grandfather since he and his grandmother were basically there in my life more than my parents. I agreed, so I called up my grandparents and asked them if they would be willing to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Tears welled up in my eyes as I spoke, overcome with emotion at the thought of how much they meant to me. Hugh and Grandpa have always been there for me, I said, my voice choked with emotion. You've been more than just grandparents to me. You've been like parents, and I can't imagine anyone else I'd rather have by my side on my wedding day. My grandparents didn't even hesitate before saying yes. They told me how honored they would be to walk me down the aisle. And unlike my parents, they would not disappoint me. Their words reassured me, and in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace and contentment wash over me with my grandparents by my side. I knew that I had a family who loved me unconditionally and accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. I also talked to my in-laws about this, and Rob's parents assured me that they did not care if my parents didn't attend, and that regardless of their attendance, they were delighted to witness and support our union. My wedding is in 2 days, and today I woke up to several missed calls from my dad. I called him back thinking it was an emergency, and when he picked up, he asked me if it was true that my grandparents were walking me down the aisle. I told him yes, that was true. And then my dad went off about how disrespectful this was to have asked my grandparents. I reminded him how he was the one who had declined to come to my wedding, so I didn't see why he was so upset. My dad went on to yell at me about how he and mom were just trying to make me see the wrong of my ways and that they thought that by declining the invitation, it would teach me a lesson. He went on to say how it was he and mom who had raised me and paid for my food and education, so my grandparents had no right to replace him. I tried to reason with him, explaining that my grandparents had been there for me in ways he and mom never were, but he wouldn't listen. He also told me how I had done nothing but alienate everyone from me, and this was all my fault. Since this conversation, I have been wondering if I really did something wrong here. Aida. For asking my grandparents to walk me down the aisle. Update 1. Wow, I did not expect so many people would comment on my post. I have seen a lot of advice and suggestions on how I should approach this situation. I do agree that I need to cut off my parents permanently, because the constant back and forth is exhausting and is starting to affect my mental health. I don't want them in my life when they have consistently shown me that Vicky is always their first priority. My parents are indeed selfish, and I have known that for a long time. However, how can a child just stop loving his or her parents? It's a much easier thing to say, but it's very difficult to actually do it. However, for my mental peace, I have no choice but to do this, so I can enjoy my wedding tomorrow. Update 2. Sorry for the lack of update this past month, but I have been quite busy since my wedding. First of all, yes, my wedding went quite well with my grandparents by my side as I walked down the aisle. Despite the absence of my parents, I felt a deep sense of joy as I exchanged vows with Rob, committing to spend the rest of our lives together. My girlfriends and I danced the night away, and I can't begin to describe how important it is to stay in touch with your childhood friends no matter what, because sometimes they are your chosen family during the reception. I did feel a twinge of sadness at the realization that my parents were not there to share in this special moment, especially as I watched Rob's parents and cousins giving speeches to him. However, I took solace in the knowledge that I had made the right decision for myself, prioritizing my own well-being and happiness. Some of my girlfriends did give speeches, sharing memories of our experiences and the bond that had carried us through both good times and bad. In the days following the wedding, Rob and I went for our honeymoon, which his parents had paid for as a wedding gift. I spent all my days just lazing around, enjoying myself with my husband. I feel so giddy every time I look at Rob and realize that he is married to me now. As I had mentioned earlier, I did cut off my parents by blocking them from everywhere. I didn't bother sending them an explanation because, very frankly, they don't even deserve one. I have no idea whether Vicky actually had a housewarming that day, or it was just an excuse for my parents to not attend my wedding. But at this point, I don't care. I wish nothing but the best to them and their beloved daughter. Update 3. So, I was not going to update anything further since my last update, but something just unexpected happened, and I thought you all deserved to know. I haven't checked my email in the past month because I was busy with my wedding and honeymoon, but today, as I was sorting through the emails, I found an email from Vicky. I don't even know how she found out my email address, and I was completely taken aback. I hesitated over whether to open her mail or simply delete it unread, but curiosity got the better of me, so I clicked on the email. Inside was a lengthy message from Vicky, expressing her regret over our strained relationship and her desire to reconcile. She acknowledged the mistakes she had made in the past, admitting that she had been selfish and immature. Vicky apologized for the pain she had caused me over the years and expressed a genuine desire to make amends. She went on to write how she feels happy for me now that I'm married and that she wishes me nothing but the best. She ended the mail pleading that I should not punish my parents by cutting them off and that they missed me. Reading her words, I felt the mix of emotions: surprise, skepticism. Part of me wants to believe that Vicky has truly changed, that she is sincere in her apology and willing to work towards repairing our relationship. But another part of me remains guarded because this seems too good to be true. However, regardless of what she has written, I know for sure my parents don't miss me because if they had, they would not have treated me this way all these years. I thought about sending a reply back to her, but then I decided against it. After all, forgiveness isn't something to be rushed. It is a process that requires time and reflection. And while I am not sure if I'm ready to forgive Vicky, I don't want to completely burn the bridge either, since she is the one who has apologized to me for her actions. To be honest, after my marriage, I no longer feel alone. I have learned to recognize that I have my loving husband by my side, supportive friends, and the unwavering love of my grandparents, and with their support. I know that I can navigate whatever challenges lay ahead without ever needing Vicky or my parents in my life. I have also looked into it and have found a good therapist with whom I have booked my first appointment. I have taken this step so I can address and resolve any wounds from my past and heal from them. Story 2. My parents rebranded the family auto shop that I built for years under my lazy brother's name. So I rented my own place, built a real business, and watched them beg me to save theirs. Hey Reddit, I don't usually post on here. I just scroll, read drama, and mind my business. But things at home went so sideways, I honestly didn't know where else to drop this. So I, 24 male, have been getting the absolute shit end of the stick in my family since I was a kid. My younger brother Ryan, 22 male, is the golden child who can literally do no wrong in my parents' eyes. The favoritism in our house is so blatant, I'm surprised they didn't hang a sign over my bed that said, backup plan. I'm not exaggerating. This is some real, you're just the spare son level crap. Let me break this down for you guys. I've been working in our family's auto shop since I was 13. No pay, no perks, just your learning responsibility. While other kids were at the skate park or playing Xbox, I was under rusty F-5050s in 100-degree heat pulling brake rotors and trying not to inhale 40 years of dust and rust. And Ryan? He didn't touch a wrench until he was 19. Even then, it was only to pose for a photo while I did the work. No lie, dude posted a pic of himself standing next to a car I fixed and captioned it, "Busy day at the shop." Busy doing what? Breathing? I handled real jobs. Engine swaps. Suspension rebuilds. Manual clutch replacements. When I was 17, I rebuilt a transmission solo. Ryan once spilled coolant and asked if it would stain his shoes. I wish I was kidding. Since turning 18, I've been expected to work full-time in the shop and also pay $400 a month to live at home. Yup, $400 for the same room I grew up in, with a broken ceiling fan and a door that doesn't even close all the way. Meanwhile, Ryan? Rent-free. He eats the food I help buy, runs up the electric bill with his gaming setup, and still acts like he's doing us a favor just by existing. When I finally brought it up, like, hey, maybe Ryan should help out too, I got hit with the classic, he's still figuring things out speech. From the same people who told me to be a man when I had a panic attack at work and threw up in the oil bay. The double standards are Olympic level. In high school, I had to keep a 3.5 GPA, work weekends at the shop, and was expected to save for college. Ryan barely passed math, skipped class constantly, and once crashed Dad's truck into a dumpster because he was bored. What did he get? A boys will be boys and a new iPhone. I went to trade school, worked part-time, paid off my student loans early, and never once asked them for a dime. You know what I got after graduating? A half-hearted good job and a coupon to Chili's. Not even a gift card. A fucking coupon. Last month, Ryan got promoted. Let me set the scene. I walk into work like usual. Coffee in one hand, schedule in the other, and there's a brand new sign hanging above the front counter. R&R Performance. Managed by Ryan, no joke. New sign, new logo, even branded t-shirts. They didn't tell me, didn't warn me. Just flipped the script overnight and handed the title of manager to the guy who once called a catalytic converter that hot tube thingy. I laughed out loud thinking it was a joke. My dad just said, "Ryan's stepping up. He's got the vision." My mom chimed in with, "And you're more of the hands-on type. This is a good balance." So let me get this straight. I bust my ass in that shop for 10 years, and now I'm the guy who gets to stay in the back and make things work. While Golden Boy takes credit, talks to customers, and posts selfies about being a business owner, every time a customer compliments the work, Ryan says, "Thanks, man. We try our best." We? This dude wouldn't know a torque spec if it was tattooed on his forearm. And of course, my parents are fully leaning into it. "You and your brother make such a great team," my mom said last week. Team? This isn't a team. This is me running a marathon while Ryan rides a scooter across the finish line and takes the trophy. It gets worse. Ryan started throwing his weight around, told me I should clean up the shop more, and that presentation is everything. Then tried to correct me in front of a customer while I was explaining what was wrong with their AC compressor. The look I gave him could have melted steel, but my parents backed him up. "He's just trying to be helpful," my dad said. "He's learning." Yeah? Maybe he should have learned that before he started calling himself a manager. Now I hear whispers that they're thinking of transitioning leadership fully to Ryan in the next year. Apparently, he's been really showing potential. I'm the one fixing everything. He's the one sipping iced coffee in the office pretending to email vendors. I know what you're thinking. Why not just leave? Trust me, I've thought about it. But I've got bills. I've got a car loan. And until I finish saving up for my own space and tools, I'm stuck in this joke of a family business where the joke is always me. But they don't know what I'm planning. I'm done being the background guy. So now we've got this brand new sign on the shop window, R&R Performance, managed by Ryan, and suddenly everyone's acting like we're the Fast and Furious franchise. Except nothing changed. Except now Ryan thinks he's Vin Diesel, and I'm just that guy who does the heavy lifting. And by heavy lifting, I mean everything. Since the rebrand, Ryan's been doing this thing where he walks around with a clipboard and pretends he's checking inventory. He doesn't even know what half the part numbers mean. I watched him stand in front of the same stack of rotors for 10 minutes, fake nodding while scrolling through Instagram. He takes selfies from the office like he's in some tech startup, not a grease-stained garage where the bathroom hasn't had hot water in 3 years. And every time a customer walks in, he slaps on that fake CEO tone. "Welcome to R&R. We're here to take care of you." Like, bro, the only thing you've taken care of is finishing off the last soda in the mini fridge that I paid for. Meanwhile, I'm still the one underneath cars getting my knuckles busted on rusty bolts. I'm the one who stays late when jobs go over. I'm the one who handles the pissed-off guy whose alternator was supposed to be done by Thursday. And when Ryan screws something up, like ordering the wrong filter for a Civic and installing it on a Corolla, I'm the one who eats the blame. But here's where it really starts getting fun. So a couple weeks after the sign goes up, my mom pulls me aside while I'm mid-break job and asks if I can help float a few of the shop expenses this month. Says we're behind on vendor payments because Ryan's is still learning the billing process, which is code for, "Ryan forgot to pay the invoices, and we need you to cover it like always." She's asking me to pay for his screw-up. I tell her no. I was polite about it, but I said I've got my own bills, and I'm already doing more than my share. She looks at me like I just kicked the family dog. Later that night, I get hit with the trifecta. Dad knocks on my door, gives the "we're all in this together" speech. And my mom joined in and said, "I just don't understand what happened to the sweet boy who used to help his family without complaining." Right. That kid got replaced the second you gave his job title to a clown with good hair and zero discipline. But it gets even better. My aunt calls me. Says she heard I was being difficult and creating tension at work. Says family needs to stick together. and that maybe I'm just feeling left out now that Ryan's finally stepping up. This lady lives 5 towns over and hasn't been in our shop in years. Suddenly she's got opinions? Turns out Ryan's been running his mouth, telling the whole family that I've been moody and negative and resisting change. I tells them I don't like seeing him succeed. And my parents? Instead of shutting it down, they're nodding along. I overheard my dad on the phone with a cousin saying, "It's been a tough transition. Jack's struggling to let go of control. Like I'm some washed-up dictator being forced into retirement, not the guy who's been keeping this entire operation from collapsing since I was a teenager. So now I'm paying rent, busting my back, getting zero credit, and being painted as the villain because I'm not cheering for the same guy who's been coasting his entire life. And Ryan? He's loving it. He comes in late, skips lunch shifts, takes 3-hour supplier meetings that are really just him driving to Starbucks to take mirror pics in the parking lot, and then shows up with some recycled TikTok motivational quote like, "Leadership is about vision, not labor." He said that, out loud, while I was elbow deep in a Subaru's engine bay fixing his misdiagnosis. Then came the family dinner. My mom set it up, said it'd be good bonding time. I figured whatever, I'll show up, eat, and smile. Nope. Dinner turns into a Ryan fan club meeting. Ryan's been working so hard lately. Ryan's really finding himself. Ryan's got a mind for business. Even my grandmother said, "I'm proud of how far he's come." Far? From what? The couch? I finally lost it when my dad raised his glass and said, "Here's to the future of R&R, under Ryan's leadership." I looked around like someone was going to speak up. No one did. So I said, "Cool. So I guess the guy who actually runs the shop will just keep doing the heavy lifting while Golden Boy plays boss in the office?" Dead silence. Ryan, trying to be slick, goes, "Come on, man, don't make this weird. It's a family business." I replied, "Yeah, one I've been running while you nap and post motivational memes." That didn't go over well. After it, my mom came to my room and said, "You embarrassed us. Ryan's doing his best. If you can't support your brother, maybe you need some time to think about your role in the business." Think about my role? Lady, I am the business. But okay, if they want to push me out, they better be ready for what happens next. Because if I'm not family to them unless I'm useful, then I'm going to stop being useful real fast. So after that dinner turned Ryan hype party, I kept my head down and went back to work. Not for them, for the clients. The regulars who trusted me to actually fix their cars, not smile and pose next to them. Guys who brought their trucks in because they knew I gave a damn. Not because of some logo slapped on the wall by a kid who still calls the check engine light a vibe killer. I was clocking 10-hour days, sometimes more, while Ryan started coming in later and leaving earlier. First, he was handling marketing. Then it became networking lunches. By the third week, he stopped showing up on Fridays altogether. Said he needed mental reset days. I haven't had a day off in 3 months. But apparently, I'm the one with the bad attitude. They started treating me like some disgruntled employee, instead of the guy who kept this shop from burning to the ground every time Ryan installed something backwards. When invoices went missing, you should be more organized. When a customer got pissed because Ryan forgot to order their part, don't throw your brother under the bus. My parents were deep in the Kool-Aid. Mom started leaving articles on the kitchen counter about how to support your ambitious child. Every single one was clearly about Ryan. Dad started talking like we were a Fortune 500 startup instead of a barely break-even 3-bay garage. And then they asked me for money. Let me say that again. They asked me for money. Not in a, "Hey, can you cover dinner?" kind of way. In a, "We're making big plans for the shop, and we'd love for you to invest in the future" kind of way. Like I was some outside donor being offered a chance to buy into the brand I bled for. It started with my dad casually mentioning some upgrades, repainting the front lot, new signage, redoing the waiting room, getting branded uniforms with embroidered names. Embroidered, for a shop that still has a bucket catching roof leaks in Bay 2. I asked who was paying for all this. He looked me dead in the face and said, "Well, Ryan's got great ideas but not much capital yet. And your mother and I are tapped out, but you've been saving." No shame. Just threw it out there like I should be flattered. Saving for what? I asked. And he hits me with, "You're not married. You don't pay rent outside. It's not like you have a mortgage. Why not help the family grow?" I stared at him for a good 5 seconds. Not angry, not even shocked anymore. Just taking it in. Because here's the thing. They don't see me as a person. I'm a resource. A dependable one. A walking wrench with a bank account. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't. I just started moving differently. First thing I did was separate my savings into a new bank account under a different institution. Something they wouldn't recognize if they tried to go snooping. You think they wouldn't? These are the same people who once opened my mail by mistake, 3 times in 1 month. Then I changed the lock code on my toolbox. Ryan complained it made the shop feel less like a team. I said nothing, just kept tightening the screws behind my smile. I even started keeping my own log of customer invoices and payments. Not because I thought I'd need it, just because my gut told me to. And my gut's been screaming since the day they put Ryan's name on the damn window. 2 weeks later, my mom cornered me in the kitchen, said they were moving forward on the upgrades, with or without my help, but they'd need me to sign off on transferring the business license so it could be restructured under Ryan's name for marketing purposes. Marketing purposes. I didn't even answer her. Just walked away, went into the garage, and started changing the serpentine belt on a Civic like nothing happened. Later that night, Ryan came into my room without knocking. Shocker. And flopped on my chair like we were still 10 years old sharing bunk beds. He said, "Mom and Dad are stressed, man. They're trying to build something long-term. You've always been the dependable one. Just be cool for once. Just be cool for once." You ever get so numb to disrespect that even hearing it doesn't register right away? That was me at that moment. He stood up, slapped me on the shoulder, and said, "It's gonna be our shop, bro. Eventually, we're a team." And then he walked out. He didn't see the look on my face because he never bothers to look. They think they've got me locked in. They think I'll never leave because I've never made noise before. Because I still live at home. Because I still show up to the shop and do the work. Because I've always done the right thing. But I'm not trapped. I'm patient. And they're mistaking that for weakness. So when they ask me again, and I know they will, I'm going to say no. And this time, I won't explain myself. They won't see it yet, but that'll be the moment everything starts falling apart for them. Not because I'll yell. Not because I'll throw a tantrum like Ryan does when a coffee order's wrong. But because I'm the foundation they've been standing on for years. And I'm about to step away. About a week after Ryan gave me the teamwork makes the dream work speech in my own room like a budget Tony Robbins, I started noticing things getting weird. Not loud weird. Quiet weird. For starters, I walked into the shop one morning and found my workbench cleared. Not just tidied, emptied. All my tools were gone. My labeled sockets, my pry bars, my torque wrench I bought with my own cash 2 years ago, disappeared. I asked my dad where everything went. He shrugged, said, "Ryan's reorganizing the shop layout. You'll have a shared workstation now." A shared workstation. The same Ryan who stripped a bolt clean off a valve cover last month and then blamed it on cheap metal. I didn't say anything. Just turned around, grabbed my spare 3/8 ratchet from my car, and got back to work. Spent the entire day using borrowed tools like a guest mechanic at my own damn shop. Then came the second hit. Mom cornered me in the laundry room. Like literally stood between me and the exit with a manila envelope in her hands. She had this fake sweet tone, like she was trying to sell me vitamins. "Your dad and I were talking," she started. "And since Ryan's taking on more of the business duties, we think it makes sense to restructure ownership." I didn't say anything. I already knew what was coming. She held up the envelope like it was a gift. "This is just paperwork. Nothing dramatic. It transfers management responsibility to Ryan, so he can sign contracts and handle shop decisions without needing Dad's signature every time." I opened it. Read through it. Noticed one very specific line that basically stated, "All future profits and business rights fall under the name Ryan Havernell as primary operating owner." I closed it, handed it back to her, and said, "No. That's it. Just no." She blinked, like the word didn't compute. "It's not a big deal. You'll still be part of things. We're just making it easier for Ryan to handle the business side." "You mean easier for him to own the business while I fix the messes?" She frowned. "Why are you making this so hard?" And that's when it clicked. They weren't just trying to push me into the background anymore. They were trying to get me to hand over everything, quietly, legally, willingly, so they could say it was my choice. I didn't yell, didn't argue. I just walked past her and went to my room. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up downloading every invoice I'd logged, every customer order I'd personally handled, copies of vendor payments I processed, screenshots of text convos with clients thanking me for repairs Ryan claimed credit for. I put everything on a drive and stored it in my glove box. Because now it wasn't just disrespect. It was theft. And they thought I was too passive to notice. 2 days later, my dad tried a different approach. Caught me after we closed and said, "You've got to start thinking long term. Ryan has the energy for the future. You've got the skill. But he's the face." I asked him, "So what am I? The hands?" He didn't answer. That weekend, my aunt, same one who thinks Facebook is a reliable news source, called to check in. And by check in, I mean pressure me. She said my parents were so stressed, and that it's not fair for me to hold back the business out of pride. Then she hit me with, "You're not a child anymore. Stop acting like one." And that's when I knew. They'd told the whole family I was refusing to sign because I was being petty, immature, that I was the reason things were getting delayed, not the golden child who can't even align a tire machine without someone holding his hand. But fine. They wanted to play dirty? I could get dirty too, just smarter. That night I talked to a customer, Brian, who also happened to be a small business attorney. He'd mentioned it once after I fixed his AC unit in a Ford Edge. I asked him some questions, told him hypothetically, if someone worked at a shop their whole life, helped build it, had no ownership, and was suddenly being pushed out, what could they do? Brian didn't even hesitate. Depends. Got proof you helped run things? Transactions? Witnesses? A paper trail? I sent him the folder. He called me back the next night and said, "You've got enough here to blow a hole through their plans. Don't sign anything. Don't even say anything. Just let them keep talking." So that's what I did. The next week, Ryan rolled out new protocols. Told me I needed to clock in using an app he set up, report every job to him, and clear parts orders through his approval. I said cool. Then started forwarding every conversation to my own email. They still thought I was playing along. I let them. But the more they tried to edge me out, the more I stacked the receipts. When Ryan accidentally underbilled a client by $300 and blamed me, I had the text trail showing him confirming the wrong price. When Dad told Uncle Rick that I refused to handle the marketing side, I had a calendar full of meetings I scheduled with ad reps back when Ryan thought SEO was a car part. It all went in the folder. And still, I didn't say a word. Because what's more dangerous than someone you underestimate? Someone who's been watching you lie, taking notes the whole time. It finally happened on a Monday. I'd just finished patching a cracked radiator on a 12 Chevy Tahoe that Ryan told the customer probably just needed a flush. It didn't. I was sweating, tired, and one spark plug wire away from walking out when my dad called me into the office. Not the usual, "Hey, come here" thing. He actually said, "Let's have a sit down," which he's never said in his life unless someone died or something big was about to go down. I walked in and immediately knew. The envelope was already on the desk. My mom was sitting in the corner with that fake soft look she always puts on before she tries to guilt you into doing something that isn't in your best interest. Ryan? He wasn't there. He never shows up for the dirty parts. He's only around for the photo ops and backpats when the dust settles. Dad clears his throat like he's about to give a press conference. "We've thought long and hard about this, and we really think it's time to make the shift official. You'll always be a part of the shop, but Ryan needs to step into ownership. It's his time. His time." I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. I just sat down across from him and said, "What's in the envelope?" He slides it over. Same thing as before. New version of the transfer papers, a whole lot of legalese, and a signature line with my name at the bottom. This one was tighter, more formal, like they'd gotten someone to clean it up and make it harder to argue. "Nothing changes for you," he says, like that's supposed to sweeten the deal. "You'll still have your job. You'll still run the bay. We just need this to move forward on some licensing updates." I flipped through it. Didn't read every word, didn't have to. I'd already sent the draft to Brian, the business attorney. He broke it down in plain English a week ago. "They're trying to make your brother majority owner. Once you sign, they can fire you legally anytime, and you'll have no claim to anything. Not even the name." I closed the folder, sat back in the chair. "Not signing this." My mom leaned forward. "Honey, we need you to think about the bigger picture." I looked at her. "I am. That's why I'm not signing." Dad's jaw tensed. "Do you want to be part of this family or not?" There it was. The threat. It always shows up when guilt fails. "You know what?" I said. "Let's talk about that." I pulled out my phone, opened my file folder, and dropped a printed copy of my own onto the desk. Labeled, "Shop Records, Labor and Operations Log." Jack. Their faces shifted real quick. "This is every job I've done since I was 18, I said. Every invoice, every customer follow-up, every supply run, every vendor call, every part installed that Ryan forgot to order. All of it. Time-stamped. Signed off. Not just names. Details. Pictures. Screenshots." Dad reached for the folder, and I pulled it back. "Nah, you don't get to flip through it like it's homework. You had 10 years to notice." I looked at both of them. "You want to talk about ownership? This shop only runs because of me. And you're trying to cut me out like I'm the help." Mom started doing that voice crack, throat clear thing like she was about to fake cry. I shut that down real quick. You're not going to guilt me this time. You knew what you were doing. You just thought I wouldn't fight back. Dad leaned back. So what? You're threatening us now? I smirked. Nope. I'm giving you a chance to fix it. You want Ryan to be involved? Cool. Make him earn it. Make him work full-time, pass an ASE test, show up more than 3 times a week. Until then, he doesn't get to be manager just because he's your favorite. Silence. Dead, cold silence. I stood up, grabbed the manila envelope, tore it in half right down the middle, and dropped it in the trash. I'll keep working, but I'm done pretending this is fair. You want me out? Say it out loud. Fire me. But if you try to screw me again behind my back, I've got copies of everything, including your tax shortcuts, Dad. His eyes went wide. So did hers. Yeah, I said. You forgot I helped you file them back in 2020. Kept the emails. Just know, I'm not the weak one here. I'm just quiet. And then I left. Went back to the bay, finished the job, cleaned my hands, and went home like it was any other Monday. Ryan said to me later that night, Bro, you're blowing this way out of proportion. I didn't even know they were doing that. I left him on red. Next day, nobody said a word to me. Not my parents, not Ryan. Just walked around acting like nothing happened. But the energy shifted. No more paperwork. No more surprise meetings. Just tension. Which was fine by me, because they'd finally seen it. I wasn't just the hands, I was the spine. And they'd just learned what happens when you try to walk without it. The silence didn't last long. For a few days after I shut down the ownership grab, it was all awkward smiles and forced small talk. Mom would ask if I wanted more eggs like nothing had happened. Dad would grunt morning and disappear behind the paper. Ryan stayed out of my way, which was honestly the smartest move he's ever made. But then things started shifting. First, the schedule got weird. I showed up Monday morning and found a handwritten calendar taped to the wall in the office. My name was only on it for 2 days that week. Ryan's name was on every day, plus a note that said, Ryan will oversee front desk plus customer service. I asked Dad what was up. He mumbled something about needing to reduce overlap and making room for new hires. New hires? We hadn't hired anyone. It was just me getting phased out again, but now they were trying to make it look like a business decision. I didn't say anything. I just started logging my hours off the record, tracking when I showed up, what I worked on, and who requested me directly. Because while they were trying to erase me off paper, I was still the one the customers wanted. The second shift came from the family side. One night, I got a text from my cousin Mark. Hey man, I heard you're making things hard for your folks. Everything okay? I stared at that for a full minute before replying, Define making things hard. Mark told me he'd had dinner with my parents over the weekend. Apparently, they'd painted this whole picture about how I was the one trying to take the business, how I was jealous of Ryan's success, how I was emotionally unstable and acting out. I laughed when I read that part. Acting out. I haven't raised my voice in that house since high school. I'd been keeping my head down, working, staying quiet. And now suddenly I was the villain in some pity party story they cooked up for the relatives? I told Mark what really happened. Sent him screenshots, invoices, the manila folder PDF. He didn't reply for an hour. When he finally did, all he said was, Damn, that's not the version they told me. One by one, I started getting weird messages from extended family. Not direct attacks, just passive crap like, try to see it from their perspective. Or maybe it's time to let go and move on. Let go of what? My work? My name? My piece of the shop I helped build? Nah, I wasn't going anywhere. So I kept showing up. Every time they slashed my hours, I still came in. I stayed late. Took photos of every job I completed. Emailed the client list I built to my personal address. I started building a portfolio without telling anyone. Then came the real kick. They changed the shop password. We had a shared login for our POS system. One morning, I showed up to find the tablet locked. Password invalid. Ryan said, Oh yeah, we switched systems. Dad said to streamline. So I called Dad. Asked for the new login. He paused. Then said, We're trying to keep things simplified for management. If you need something processed, just go through Ryan. They wanted me off the books completely. So I switched gears. That day, I took a walk 2 blocks down to an old warehouse that had been empty since COVID. I'd seen a for lease sign on it for months. I called the number, asked about rates, space, noise zoning, parking availability. It was doable, not today, not even next week, but soon. And now I had a reason. Because the final straw came Friday. I got home late, had stayed behind after hours fixing an alternator that Ryan couldn't diagnose. I went to shower, came out, and found my room half empty. Not trashed, just stripped. My books, gone. A few of my tools, missing. My laptop unplugged and sitting on the kitchen table. I asked Mom what happened. She looked up from her phone and said, "We figured it was time to start cleaning things up. You don't need all that stuff cluttering the room anymore." Cluttering. Like my personal things were a mess they had to deal with. I said nothing. Just grabbed my laptop, walked back into my room, and locked the door. Then I opened that email draft I'd been saving for months. To Brian, the business lawyer. Subject, confirming services and timeline. Body, I'm ready. Let's move forward with the paperwork for independent operations. That night, I also emailed 3 clients I had long-term repair relationships with. Told them I might be shifting locations soon and would let them know the details if they were interested in following. All 3 replied within the hour. Yes, just tell us where. That's when I knew. They could mess with my schedule, cut my hours, block me from systems, but they couldn't erase who actually kept the shop alive, and they definitely couldn't stop what was coming next. 2 months after they tried pushing me out, I signed a lease on that warehouse I saw down the block. The old one with the cracked floors and busted overhead light. It wasn't pretty, but it had 4 bays, a working lift, and enough space to breathe without Ryan breathing down my neck with a GoPro. Mark helped me set it up. He showed up the first weekend with gloves, pizza, and a giant Bluetooth speaker that only played 90s rock. We spent the whole Saturday scrubbing the floors, patching drywall, and setting up my toolboxes. He didn't ask for anything, didn't make speeches, just said, "If anyone deserves to build something real, it's you." Mark and his girlfriend let me stay rent-free until I got on my feet. Gave me keys, a place at the dinner table, and silence when I needed it. I hadn't felt that kind of respect under a roof in years. 3 weeks later, Jack Auto Repair opened for business. No ribbon cutting, no Facebook event. Just a white banner with red block letters, a Craigslist post, and some text to customers I trusted. That first week, I had 5 cars. Second week, 10. Word got around. I kept my head down, showed up early, stayed late, took every job seriously, no matter how small. I didn't waste time filming content or pushing trendy BS. I fixed cars the right way, charged fair, and treated people like they mattered. By the second month, I had enough to rent a 1-bedroom apartment above a barbershop 3 blocks away. Small place, ugly carpet, but it had a deadbolt, a quiet street, and no yelling. I moved out of Mark's, took him and his girl to dinner, and promised him the first free oil change for life. And then came the part I didn't even plan for, buying the old shop. It was Ryan's idea, apparently. He'd burnt out fast, couldn't handle the pressure, barely kept the doors open. Customers stopped coming after he started screwing up invoices and overcharging people for labor he didn't even understand. My dad called me himself, asked if I'd consider taking the shop off our hands. I said no, straight up, no hesitation. That's when the begging started. They said things were tough, real tough. No business, no money, no backup plan. The shop was dead. Tools rusting, bays empty, bills piling up. My dad tried to guilt trip me with, "It's still your family's name on that deed." My mom jumped in a few days later saying, "We just need a fresh start. You could help us get back on track." I still said no. They weren't asking me to buy it. They wanted me to work there, fix their mess, save their pride, for free. I wasn't going to crawl back just so they could pretend they were the ones who built something. I had my own name now, my own shop, my own customers. I didn't need theirs, and I wasn't about to be their safety net. So they gave up. The place stayed closed for weeks. Eventually, they had no choice. They sold it. But here's the funny part. Turns out my name was still attached to part of the original lease agreement from when I was underage and helping full-time. Some technicality my dad forgot to update in the system. The city flagged it. A few weeks later, I got a check in the mail, my legal share from the sale. They didn't even send it. The authorities did. I cashed it without hesitation. Took every dime and dumped it into expanding my shop. New lifts, better tools, a full paint booth, and a waiting area that didn't smell like burnt rubber and regret. As for them, I don't know what happened exactly. I heard through Mark that they moved into a much smaller place. Ryan's been hopping jobs. My parents tried selling some old equipment online to stay afloat. They went from running a full shop to barely scraping by. Meanwhile, I'm booked out 2 weeks in advance. People drive from the next town over just to get an honest estimate. And I did it without stealing anything. They lost everything trying to build an empire on favoritism. I built mine with my own hands. Story 3. I'm 37 now, and life looks a lot different than it did a few years back. I'm currently married to Larry, who was once the other man in my life when I was still married to my first husband. We've officially been together for 5 years, married for 4. It's weird how life takes these turns, isn't it? Let's backtrack to the beginning. I met my ex-husband in college, and we got married young. He was always the hardworking type, ambitious and dedicated, which I admired so much about him. But as his career took off, it demanded more and more of his time. Our home life suffered, especially our intimacy. He was great in many ways, helpful around the house, made sure to carve out time for monthly dates, but emotionally and physically I felt neglected. Enter Larry. I met him when I was 31 at a friend's party. He was charismatic, charming, and really seemed to understand me. He made me feel seen and heard in ways I hadn't experienced in years. We started off as friends, but quickly our connection deepened, and 7 months later, we began an affair. I won't lie. It was exhilarating at first, filled with passion and the excitement of new love. But deep down, I knew the situation was complex and hurtful. Fast forward a bit, and my marriage couldn't withstand the secrecy. When my husband discovered the affair, I was faced with a hard choice. My feelings for Larry had grown so strong that when pushed to decide, I chose to leave my husband for him. We got a divorce, and not long after, Larry and I got married. The dream, however, started to show cracks pretty quickly. Our first 2 years were blissful, like living in a bubble. We were both working, using some of the settlement money I received from my divorce to enjoy life and solidify our bond. But then 2020 hit, and it hit hard. Larry's work dried up due to the pandemic, and suddenly I found myself as the main provider. Financial strain put a stress on us like never before. I took on 2 jobs just to keep us afloat, and even then, it was a struggle. We had to lean on my parents for support, something I never thought we'd need to do. The reality of our situation sank in further when we had to sell the house and car I got from my divorce settlement. We downsized to a cheaper place, squeezing every penny to save for a potential business venture as a way to turn things around. Starting the business was a desperate move, but thankfully, it began doing better than we expected. It was like once we shed all remnants of my past life, including the physical ties to my ex-husband, we could finally start to build something new for ourselves. It's been hard work and there are no guarantees, but we're holding on to the hope that things will continue to improve. About 4 months ago, I found out that my partner Larry was secretly taking money out of my savings. That's like if you had a piggy bank where you were saving up for something cool, and then you found out someone was sneaking some out when you weren't looking. When I asked him about it, he got really mean and said he didn't trust me. That's because before I was with Larry, I made a huge mistake in my previous marriage. I wasn't faithful, and since Larry was single when we got together, he thinks it's okay to keep some of my money for himself, just in case things go bad between us. Larry also doesn't help out at home at all. Imagine if you had to do all the chores and someone else just chilled, played games, hung out with friends at the bar, and didn't do anything to help. That's what's happening. And it gets worse. I recently found out he's cheating on me with a waitress from the bar. It really shocked me and made me super sad because I thought we were supposed to trust each other. Now, talking about divorce feels like a giant mess because we don't have a lot of money, and everything seems messed up. It's even harder than when I was with my ex-husband. Plus, Larry just quit his job, so things are really tight, and it's hard to pay for everything we need. I also have a daughter from my first marriage. She's 12 and tells me how awesome her dad is doing. They even went on a cool trip to Venice, which makes me a bit sad and jealous. I feel like maybe I didn't end things well with him. I did tell him the truth about cheating, and we split pretty amicably. He got to keep our daughter most of the time, and I got our house and car and to see her 5 days a month. But now I can't stop thinking about my ex. Maybe it's guilt, or maybe there's still love there, or maybe I'm just really mixed up because everything's a mess. I wonder if I should talk to him, but we only ever chat about our daughter, and I haven't seen him in person for a year and a half. Part of me thinks I'm a terrible person for cheating and breaking up a good thing before, and now my life's just falling apart. A small edit. I didn't left my daughter. My husband begged me to give him the primary custody as he realized he can't have it as he works in a very demanding job. I just wanted the house. But we came to a conclusion where he offered to give me money. Car and the house in exchange for primary custody. I feel guilty. Yes, but do I want to get back to him? No, because I know it won't be the right thing to do. I destroyed him and I am guilty enough. Now he rebuilt himself. I'm proud of him. My life is in shambles. And it is because of me. I take full responsibility. I just keep thinking of him because I miss him. I want to have a conversation with him and nothing more. This with the fact that the man I left him for is now having an affair and cheating on me is tearing me up. Now for the top comments before the update. Taking his money, car, and house is the thing that stands out to me here. Anything else I can understand? But to screw him over that badly and now want him back? No sympathy. Having an AP is one thing, but treating your ex like an ATM after screwing him over. OP, it was a part of the deal we made. He badly wanted the primary custody of our daughter, but having the job that demanded much of his time, he knew it won't be happening. And I would probably get the primary custody of the child, which is why he offered this house, money, and car in exchange for primary custody of the daughter. He wanted this, not me. I told him over and over again. Surely I don't deserve a second of his time because I already screwed him. I know this. Nothing I can do can change this. I just can't stop thinking about him. Comment 2. We all make mistakes. At least you're now wiser. Start focusing on your life and better yourself. You should at least open up to your ex. Say you are sorry, but move on after. Good luck. Thanks. Comment 3. Your AP sounds like a total loser. I'm not sure why. If you left your husband, who sounds like a much better person, why you can't bring yourself to leave this moocher of a man. I don't get why anyone willingly gets with a man or woman who plays video games as if it's a full-time job and does not have an actual paying full-time job. OP. He wasn't like this during the affair, and when we went legit, he was understanding, ambitious, and a confident person. He actually gave me the attention I craved for my ex, which is why I took the leap. It turned out to be something that essentially destroyed my life, my ex, his life, and my daughter's childhood as a whole. Comment 4. Maybe he was hiding these bad traits from you by being the single dependable. I'll do anything for you, guy. To me, he sounds toxic. You just really need to cut your losses and move on. Also, I didn't really want to get into this as it's harsh, but you traded your daughter in for assets, and now you don't have any of those either. Your parents sound like they may be able to get you back on your feet. If I were you, I'd move in with them and stay solo for a long, long while. Edit. I hope that you get the help that you need to get past this from friends, family, a therapist, or even just a real talk with yourself about how this isn't a good relationship to be in. Good luck moving forward. Comment 5. I mean, nobody ever seems to say this to the man when they end up becoming a weekend parent. Is it crap? Absolute glee. But there is rarely a moral outcry regardless of circumstance. It's just assumed by society that a mother has more value than a father. Opie already ducked X over beyond belief. This is why going legit with younger kids in the picture is so fucking dangerous. And I hate that it's so heavily condoned in this group. It's such rash decision. Opie. As materialistic and narcissistic as hell. Yet if she posted prior to the divorce, this group would have egged her on and encouraged that she ruined her husband and the divorce. OP, for heaven's sake, I didn't traded my daughter. I still see her. I told my ex-husband I cheated on him and wanted to leave him. Do you think it was easy? He begged me to give him the primary custody of our daughter. I already shattered him enough. I already destroyed him. Do you think it would have been all right if I got the primary custody of our daughter while he received the cash assets and 50/50 ownership of the house? Things would have been complicated. I didn't want to mention about our daughter in the post. I'm already a horrible person and I'm getting shredded by both the memes and comments. And then in real life, my life is in shambles. I'm working 2 jobs and basically paying Larry the money he spends on his AP. Do you think this is easy? That being said, I deserve it. I deserve all of it because of the foolish decisions I made. When reality hits you, you realize how much crap you are taking on. All the hell broke loose on me and it's awful. I realized I destroyed my ex-husband in all ways. About the trading, I didn't trade. It was he who offered me the house, the car, in exchange for primary custody. He literally begged me for it. What? What have you done? If you were in my place, fight him in divorce for split custody, even after he begged you, even after he offered you, even after he promised not to tell our daughter anything about my cheating. I know what I did. It's way more tough for me than for you to say it. Even after everything, she is my daughter. I never gave up on her. I sure made foolish decisions that I'm getting punished for. Edit. Pardon my grammar errors. I'm not from US. I applaud you for admitting to your foolishness. Update 1. So a few months ago, I found out my husband Larry was sneaking money out of my savings. That's like if you had a secret stash of candy and someone secretly started taking pieces without asking. Pretty sneaky, right? I was upset, but it got even worse. Fast forward to last Thursday. I come home early from work because I wanted to surprise Larry with dinner. And guess what I find? Larry in our living room, but he's not alone. He's there with someone from his previous work, and it's not just any coworker. It's the assistant principal from the school where he used to work. And they were not just having a friendly chat. It was obvious they were way too close, sitting together on our couch like it was the most normal thing in the world. Larry saw me and wasn't even shocked. He just looked at me and said, "This is how things are now. You need to get used to it." Can you believe that? I felt like my heart stopped. I just stood there, not knowing what to say or do. That night, After Larry and his friend left, I called my best friend over because I really needed someone to talk to. We sat in my kitchen, and I told her everything while trying not to cry into my ice cream. Then, she accidentally let it slip that a bunch of our friends knew about Larry's behavior. They thought I knew and was okay with it because, well, I had cheated in my past marriage. I felt so betrayed, like everyone was against me. Feeling like a detective in a mystery show, I decided to dig deeper into Larry's life. I found receipts and a lease for an apartment I never knew about. It turns out he's been renting a place across town under a fake name, and guess who's been staying there? The same assistant principal. It's like he had a whole secret life I didn't know about. Amid all this mess, my phone buzzed. It was my ex-husband, the father of my daughter. He was really concerned because our daughter overheard him talking about my situation and was upset. My heart sank. I hated the idea of her getting hurt by all this grown-up drama. My ex asked if we could meet to talk about how to handle things with our daughter, who's only 12 and shouldn't have to deal with any of this. It made me think about how things used to be with him, more stable and secure, even if we had our problems. Now here's the crazy part. Larry decided he needed space after all this blew up. He packed some bags and left, just like that, saying he wasn't sure if we even had a future together. And there I was, left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart and a broken home. I'm stuck wondering what I should do next. Should I try to fix things with Larry, or is it time to let go and start fresh? Maybe I should even talk to my ex more, not to get back together, but just to find some peace in all this chaos. One thing is clear, I need to focus on my daughter and make sure she's okay. Everything else is just noise compared to making sure she feels safe and loved. Update 2. Last week, I was just chilling at home trying to have a normal morning, sipping my coffee and scrolling through some emails. Then the mail came. I figured it was just the usual stuff, maybe some ads or the electric bill. But nope, there was this super official looking envelope mixed in. My heart sank a little because, let's be honest, good news rarely comes in envelopes that fancy. I opened it, and bam! It was like a lightning strike, but without any of the cool thunder. The letter was from a lawyer, and not just any lawyer. This was a lawyer hired by Larry, my soon-to-be ex-husband. Yep, Larry decided it's time to divorce, which honestly, I saw coming. But here's the kicker. He's not just looking to split up and go our separate ways. He wants to take half of everything I own, including my business and my 401k account. My business is like my baby, something I built from the ground up, and my 401k is all the money I've been saving for when I'm old and gray and want to relax a bit. Reading that letter, I felt all sorts of things, angry, scared, and just really, really stressed. How could Larry, who used to be my partner in everything, turn around and try to take all that I've worked so hard for? It felt super unfair, like being the main character in a movie where everything starts going wrong. After freaking out for a good 10 minutes, I called my sister. She's always been the one I turn to when things get rough. We talked for a long time. She was super supportive, telling me that I needed to stand up for myself and not let Larry push me around. She said, "You gotta fight for what's yours and show him he can't just take things from you." She also told me to get a good lawyer, someone who would help me keep what I've worked so hard to build. Now here's where it gets even trickier. Fighting this battle in court is going to cost a lot of money. Lawyers aren't cheap, and with the business already feeling the pinch from all the drama, customers can sense these things, you know? I'm sweating about how I'm going to pay for all this. On top of all the grown-up legal stuff, I'm also a mom, and my daughter is seeing all this happen. She's only 12, but she's so wise and kind. She sees me upset and comes over to give me the biggest hugs, telling me, "Mom, it's going to be okay. You're the strongest person I know." It melts my heart. She's my little ray of sunshine, and I've made a promise to myself that no matter how messy this gets, I won't let it mess her up. She deserves a happy mom and a stable life, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to give her that. So, what's next? Well, it looks like I'm about to step into a huge battle. I need to protect my business, my savings, and most importantly, keep my daughter's world as happy and safe as possible. It's going to be tough, but I've got my sister and my daughter cheering me on, and I'm ready to fight like never before. Update 3. Okay, so remember how I told you things were getting pretty crazy with Larry wanting to take everything in the divorce? Well, I thought that was as bad as it could get, but nope. Life had another twist waiting for me. Feeling really down and kind of lost, I started thinking a lot about my past, especially about Mark, my first husband. You know, he was the guy I was with before all this mess started. Things with him were pretty good at times, stable, secure, and he was really kind. After the whole disaster with Larry, I started missing those good old days with Mark. I thought maybe, just maybe, there could be a chance to fix things, to maybe start fresh with him. So, what did I do? I decided to actually go and see Mark. Yes, I drove all the way to his house, my heart racing like crazy. I was super nervous but felt like I had to try, you know? When I got there, I took a deep breath and knocked on his door. When Mark opened the door, his face was a total picture of shock. Like he couldn't believe I was standing there. I got all jittery and started talking really fast. Hey Mark, I know it's been ages and a lot has happened. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our past, and how we ended things. I'm really sorry for how everything turned out. I'm in a tough spot right now, and I guess I just miss how good things were with you. Do you think there's any chance we could talk about it? Maybe see if there's a way to start over? Mark looked at me like I had just turned up from another planet. He was clearly upset, and his voice got kind of loud. He said, "You think you can just show up out of nowhere and ask for a do-over? After all this time? After everything you did?" I tried to explain, to tell him how sorry I was, but he wasn't having any of it. It was like he had built up all this anger, and now it was all coming out. Before I knew it, he said, "I think you should leave. We've both moved on, and there's nothing left to say." And just like that, he closed the door right in my face. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of shock, sadness, and a ton of regret. Driving back home was rough. I was crying, feeling totally alone and unsure about everything. Why did I think going to Mark would help? What made me believe he might want to revisit something we had both left behind? Now, I'm sitting here back at my place, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've got this messy divorce with Larry looming over me, trying to snatch away my business and my savings. And on top of that, I just got a major reality check from Mark, which really hurt. But here's what I realized. I can't keep looking back. I've got to face forward. Yes, I made mistakes, big ones, but I've learned from them too. I need to focus on the here and now, especially on being the best mom I can be for my daughter. She needs me to be strong, to be stable, and to show her that no matter how hard life gets, we can get through it. So the plan? I'm going to get myself a really good lawyer, someone who can help me fight Larry in court and make sure he doesn't take everything I've worked for. I'm going to pour my heart into my business, make it stronger and better than ever. And I'm going to spend every moment I can making sure my daughter knows she's loved and protected. It's not going to be easy, and I'm sure there are more challenges ahead. But I've got to keep fighting, keep pushing through. Because at the end of the day, I believe there's a light at the end of this tunnel, and I'm going to reach it no matter what. Update 4. So, where do I even begin? Just when I thought I had seen it all, life decided to throw me another sham, or maybe a couple of them. After the whole debacle with Mark shutting the door in my face, I felt pretty down in the dumps. But you know what they say, life doesn't give you a break just because you're feeling low. First things first, I had to tackle the huge problem of my pending divorce with Larry, who suddenly turned into a character from a villain movie, wanting half of everything I own, my hard-earned business and all my savings piled up in my 401k. It was like a nightmare where you're falling and just can't wake up. Determined not to let Larry take me down, I went on a hunt for a superhero. Well, a super lawyer, actually. I found Miss Carter, a lawyer who came with awesome reviews and a reputation for being tough as nails. The first time I met her, I spilled everything: the love, the betrayal, the sneaky financial moves by Larry, and his outrageous demands. She listened to all of it with this intense focus, jotting down notes faster than I could talk. After I finished my long, sad tale, she looked up, her eyes sharp, and said firmly, "We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. You're not alone." It was the first time in weeks that I felt a glimmer of hope. We planned our battle strategy meticulously, marking out every step we'd take to safeguard my business and my future. While Miss Carter was gearing up for the legal battle, back at home, things were getting pretty emotional. My daughter, who's only 12, was at my home after I asked my Mark to take her for one day. She seemed to pick up on the stress vibes. She started doing these little things to cheer me up, like leaving cute notes on my pillow or drawing pictures of us holding hands, super happy. It was sweet, but also heart-wrenching because she was trying to take care of me when it should be the other way around. It made me even more determined not to let this whole mess drag me down. I had to be strong for her and for me. Just when I thought I had a handle on things, there was a knock at the door one lazy Saturday morning. I opened it, not expecting much, and who was there? My brother, who I hadn't seen in years because of a massive family fallout. There he was, looking kind of awkward and nervous. He asked if we could talk. We ended up sitting at the kitchen table with 2 steaming cups of coffee between us. He told me he'd heard about my situation through the family grapevine and felt it was time to put our differences aside and stick together because, according to him, family should stick together. It was unexpected but felt kind of nice to reconnect. He even offered to help out with my daughter whenever things got too hectic. Rebuilding bridges with my brother was like finding a safe harbor in the middle of a storm. It reminded me that even when things look really dark, there can be unexpected moments of light, people showing up for you, ready to help. So now, here I am, gearing up for what might be the fight of my life in court, but feeling a bit stronger with my lawyer and my brother by my side. I'm learning a ton about dealing with tough times, how they can really show you who's willing to stand by you and who you can really count on. Life is unpredictable, kind of like a wild. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, but the ride always goes on. And as I brace myself for the next loop-de-loop, I'm holding on to the lessons I've learned, the people who are sticking by me, and the hope that after every storm, there's a little bit of sunshine waiting to break through. Update 5. The day started like any other stressful day. I woke up early, stomach all knotted up and my mind racing about the court hearing. I met Miss Carter, my lawyer, outside the courthouse. She looked sharp, confident, and ready to take on the world. Seeing her like that made me feel a bit better, like maybe we had a real shot at winning this thing. We walked into the courthouse together, the air heavy and cool. The courtroom was big and a little intimidating, with high ceilings and long, echoing sounds every time someone moved or spoke. I sat down trying to look calm, but inside my heart was racing like a marathon runner. Larry was already there, looking all serious and lawyer it up. His lawyer had this slick, smooth-talking vibe, kind of like those TV lawyers who can twist any story to make their client look like an angel. The judge called the room to order, and Larry's lawyer started off. He was really good at telling Larry's side of the story. He talked about how Larry had always supported me and my business, even if it wasn't with money. He painted a picture of Larry as this loving, self-sacrificing husband who just wanted what he thought was fair. Then it was our turn. Miss Carter stood up and presented our case. She was amazing, laying out all the evidence we had gathered, emails, financial records, everything showing that Larry hadn't contributed to the business and had been involved in shady stuff on the side. She spoke clearly and strongly, making it seem like we had the upper hand. But then, the unexpected happened. When Larry got up to speak, he was really emotional. He talked about how lonely he felt when I was busy with my business, how he felt left behind. He even teared up a bit. It was a performance worthy of an award, and it seemed to hit a nerve with the judge. The waiting for the verdict was the worst part. Time seemed to slow down, and every tick of the clock was like a thud in my chest. Finally, the judge made his decision, and it was like a punch in the gut. Larry won. He was awarded half of everything. Half of my business, half of my 401. Half of my world. It didn't seem fair. It didn't seem right. But it was real. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt like I was in a bad dream. Everything I'd worked so hard for, half of it was now gone, just like that. It was tough to take. Back home, I had to take some time to just absorb it all. My brother, who had been my rock these past few weeks, kept reminding me that this wasn't the end. "You're down, but not out," he said. "You can rebuild. You can come back stronger." His words helped, even if they didn't fix the hurt. Now I'm looking at what's next. It's going to be a tough road, trying to rebuild my finances and my business. But I've learned something important through all this. Resilience isn't just about fighting through the good times. It's about how you handle the hits in the bad times. I've got my daughter, my brother, and a lesson in toughness that no courtroom can take away from me. As I plan my next steps, I'm focused on recovery and rebuilding, not just my business, but my spirit too. Life threw me a curveball, but I'm learning how to swing back even harder. Last update. As I sit here typing this, a lot has changed since my last update. The dust has settled from the courtroom and life has found a new kind of normal, but it's a normal that came with tough lessons and some real soul-searching. Looking back at everything that happened, from my first marriage to Mark, the whirlwind and downfall with Larry, to the dramatic courtroom battles, I've come to a stark realization. If you have a good thing, especially a good relationship, it's worth more than gold, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. I used to think that the grass might be greener on the other side. Larry seemed like an exciting new chapter after feeling neglected in my marriage with Mark. But that adventure turned into a nightmare, one that cost me not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually too. Larry's charm was just a mask, and beneath it was a person I barely recognized by the end. The court's decision was a hard pill to swallow. Losing half of everything to Larry felt like a cruel joke, especially after everything came to light. But it was during these dark times that I found out just how resilient I could be. My daughter, with her endless optimism and love, and my brother, with his renewed support, showed me the true meaning of family and strength. So here's my piece of advice. If you have a good husband or a good partner, cherish them. Work on your problems together, communicate, and don't let small gaps grow into gulfs that can't be bridged. I learned the hard way that the excitement of new things fades, but the deep, abiding comfort of a shared history and mutual respect is rare and precious. I'm rebuilding now. My business, my life, my inner circle. It's not easy, and some days are harder than others. But I'm moving forward with a clearer understanding of what's important. I'm also giving back, talking to young people about my experiences, hoping they can learn from my mistakes rather than repeating them. Life is a series of chapters, and while some of my chapters have been pretty turbulent, I'm working on making the next ones full of peace, growth, and happiness. Mistakes are part of the human experience, but they don't have to define us. We can learn, we can grow, and most importantly, we can forgive ourselves and move forward. Story 4. We picked the better child, my family bragged. After dumping me at 12, now they're broke, and that better child is mopping bathroom floors. Hey Reddit, I, 21 male, Jacob, was always the extra kid my parents kept around until they figured out where else to stick me. My sister was the golden child, and I was basically the family's spare part. Years later, she comes at me with a ridiculous request. My parents jump in, and things take a very entertaining turn. Let's just say I got the last laugh, and it may or may not have involved a mop, a blue uniform, and me trying not to pass out from laughing. From the start, it was obvious who was the star of the show. My twin sister, Madison, 21 female. Blonde hair, green eyes, dimples, all that angel child stuff people gush over. Every time someone met us, it was, oh, she's gorgeous, followed by, and that's her brother. Like I was her chauffeur or something. My parents, Steve and Sydney, ate it up. If Madison so much as burped politely, she was graceful. If I did anything, lazy, unmotivated, a problem. And I'm not exaggerating. One year for Christmas, she got an iPad and I got socks. Not nice socks. Clearance socks. 2 sizes too small. They loved pointing out that I was darker skinned than Madison. She got mom's light skin and dad's light eyes. I got me. Guess which one fit better into their family photo aesthetic? Spoiler. Not the kid who got told to stand in the back so the lighting doesn't wash out your sister's face. Growing up, I became the designated errand boy. If they needed someone to clean the garage, me. Madison's turn to do dishes? No, she had homework, so I did them. Family trips? Oh, I was invited, but only to carry luggage and take pictures of everyone else having fun. The thing that still makes my eye twitch? I was never allowed in certain family pictures. They'd literally do 2 versions, one with Madison front and center, one with just her. My version didn't exist. Now, the day they officially decided they were done with me was almost comical. I was 12. Madison was 12. We both had a school recital coming up. I didn't want to wear the itchy, too tight suit mom picked out for me. I told her it was uncomfortable and asked if I could wear something else. Something that fit. That's it. That's the crime. I didn't want to look like I was going to court for tax fraud. Mom had a full meltdown. Dad backed her up saying I was ungrateful and embarrassing the family. Next thing I know, they're saying, you know what? Maybe it's better if you go live with Uncle Rick and Aunt Karen for a while. A while turned into forever. Here's the part that makes it worse. They didn't hide the reason. A week later, I overheard my mom on the phone saying, we decided to keep the better child. That's me they're talking about. Or rather, not me. Uncle Rick and Aunt Karen, Dad's brother and his wife, were stunned. They weren't rich, but they were decent human beings. When they picked me up, they told me I'd have my own room, my own space, and that I wouldn't be treated like baggage. My parents barely said goodbye. Madison waved at me from the porch like I was going on a school trip. The last thing my mom said? Don't cause them as much trouble as you caused us. That was it. No hug, no, we'll miss you. Just a final jab to remember them by. The first night with Uncle Rick and Aunt Karen, I realized how different life could be. They actually asked if I was hungry. They didn't compare me to Madison once. They didn't care what I wore as long as it was clean. They treated me like I was part of the family, which was honestly weird at first because I wasn't used to it. But the messed up part? Even though I was gone, my parents still found ways to remind me I was the reject. They'd send me cards on Madison's birthday with pictures of her all grown up while casually leaving out any mention of me. My favorite was the time they mailed me a family photo where they'd cropped me out. You could still see my hand on Madison's shoulder. Classy. I used to think maybe it was me. Maybe I was the problem kid. But living with Rick and Karen showed me it wasn't. Turns out if you treat a kid like they matter, they actually act like they matter. So yeah, that's how I became the spare twin. No dramatic courtroom custody battles. No tragic accidents. Just two parents deciding one kid looked better on their Christmas cards than the other. And honestly, it was the best thing they could have done for me. Because while Madison was busy being groomed as the golden child, I got out. I got to live with people who didn't care how I looked in photos. And one day, I was going to make sure that decision, their choice to dump me, was the thing that came back to bite them hardest. So I figured moving with Uncle Rick and Aunt Karen would be the end of it. They tossed me out, so why would they care what I did? Yeah, turns out my parents weren't the let it go type. They were the throw something in the trash and then complain the trash doesn't send them thank you notes type. The first weird move they pulled came that Christmas. Rick brings in a stack of mail, hands me a card with my name on it. I open it up, and it's a glossy photo of my parents and Madison in matching sweaters, holding a golden retriever I'd never seen before. Big letters on the front. Merry Christmas from our perfect family. My name wasn't even printed inside. Just a Sharpie note. You'd look better in this picture if you tried harder. Merry freaking Christmas. Then they got creative. On my 14th birthday, a box shows up. Inside, a single cupcake. No frosting, no note. Just a candle jammed in the middle. And I knew instantly, this wasn't them remembering my birthday. It was their way of saying, you're not worth an actual cake. Another time, a padded envelope showed up with a gift inside. My old participation ribbon from 3rd grade, burnt on the edges. I guess they thought that would really stick it to me. This stuff wasn't for me. It was for them. They weren't trying to reconnect. They weren't even trying to hurt me in a way that made sense. They just wanted to make sure I never forgot I was the discarded one. It was about spite, nothing else. The weirdest part? The harassment was organized. I'd get something from Madison, then a week later something from Mom, then something from Dad. Like they had a harassment schedule on the fridge. One even mailed me a flash drive. I plugged it in, huge mistake, and it was a slideshow of Madison's accomplishments. School awards, vacation photos, her holding trophies, all set to this corny, inspirational music. I couldn't even get through it without laughing. By 15, it went physical. Twice they showed up. First time, I come home from school, Rick standing on the porch holding a big framed photo. My parents had just left it there. It was their updated family portrait, just the 3 of them and the dog. In the frame behind the glass, taped in the corner, was a tiny baby photo of me, with a red X drawn through it. Second time, I'm walking home, see a car parked near the corner. Madison's leaning out the window holding a giant sign that says, "Need money? Ask your real family." Couple kids from school were behind me. They saw the whole thing. Madison waved like she was at a parade. I didn't even react, just kept walking. I think me not caring pissed her off more than anything. The last straw came a few months later. A package shows up. Big box, heavy. I open it and find a shoebox inside, filled with dirt and trash. On top of the dirt, a note that read, "This is all you'll ever be worth to us." Rick nearly called the cops. I told him not to bother. I didn't want them to think they'd gotten a reaction. But in my head, I decided something important. I wasn't just going to cut them off. I was going to keep receipts. Every insult, every petty stunt, all stored away for the day I'd finally use them. By then, even Rick and Karen were saying, they're not going to stop unless you cut every line of contact. So I did. New number, privacy lock on school records, mail forwarded to a P.O. box. For about a year, things were quiet. No cards, no packages, no parade stunts. I almost thought they'd finally moved on. But here's what I've learned about people like my parents and Madison. They don't reach out because they miss you. They reach out because they want something. And when that something showed up years later, it came with a phone call from Madison herself, acting like we were best friends. I knew it was bad news before I even picked up. I'd changed my number years ago after the dirt in a box stunt, so she must have sweet-talked a cousin or guilt-tripped some relative into giving it to her. First off, her name showing up on my phone was like seeing IRS Audit Department pop up in your caller ID. You're not getting good news. Second, I hadn't heard from her in years. The last time she'd contacted me, she was holding that giant "Need money? Ask your real family" sign out of a car window. So yeah, I wasn't exactly expecting a heart-to-heart, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what angle she was working this time. I answer. Her voice is syrupy sweet, fake cheerful, like you know the way the Kardashians talk? Yeah, that tone. Hey, it's been forever. How are you? I play along. Let me guess. This call ends with you asking for money? She laughs like I'm joking. Oh, stop. Seriously, though. I've been thinking about you. We should catch up. Which is Madison speak for. I want something. I just didn't know what it was yet. We do the awkward dance for about 2 minutes, her talking about her busy life, me giving short answers. Then she goes in for the kill. So, I heard Uncle Rick got some money from Grandma and Grandpa? Bingo. I keep my tone flat. Yeah, they left a trust in my name that Rick managed. He just transferred it to me a few months ago, so it's mine. Well, I just thought, you know, since we're twins and all, it would make sense to split it. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Split my inheritance? That's cute. She didn't laugh back. I'm serious, Jacob. We're family. Family shares. I could feel my jaw tightening. Funny, you didn't want to share when I was eating dinner alone in the kitchen, so you could sit at the good table. God, you're so dramatic, she says, instantly shifting into that tone she used as a kid, the one that made everything I said sound like I was crazy. This is about doing the right thing. I need this money for college. Oh, I said. You mean the college you could have paid for with the fund Mom and Dad set up? The one Mom told Rick about before I heard from a cousin you blew it on handbags and a trip to Italy silence. That hit. Then she snaps back. That was different. I was living my life. You've had it easy with Rick and Karen. You don't need all that money. The audacity actually made me laugh again. Let me get this straight. You waste your own college fund, and now you think you're entitled to mine. Because I had the easy life with the people who actually wanted me? You're being selfish, she says. If the roles were reversed, I'd help you. Oh yeah? I said. That's funny. Because when I asked to borrow your graphing calculator in high school, you told me to buy my own. But now I'm supposed to fund your entire future? Her voice goes from sweet to sharp. If you're not going to do the right thing, maybe Mom and Dad should talk to you. I smirked. Go for it. Haven't talked to them in a while. Should be fun. Click. She hangs up. 48 hours later, my phone starts blowing up. First it's my mother, then my father, then some aunt I don't even remember meeting. All with the same script. It's your duty to help your sister. You wouldn't even have the life you do without us. Without them. The same people who dumped me at their brother's house like I was a broken toaster. One voicemail from my dad actually said, "You're still my son, so I have a right to ask this of you." Which was hilarious, because the only time he's ever used the word son with me is when he's trying to guilt trip me. One even sent me a link to a GoFundMe Madison made titled, "Help me get to college. My brother won't help." The description was pure gold. My twin brother was given a huge sum of money, but refuses to share with me, even though he knows how important my education is. He's had it easy his whole life while I've struggled. Struggled. The girls' struggle involved an all-inclusive resort in the Maldives last summer. The best part? The GoFundMe had a picture of her standing next to a BMW. Her BMW. At this point, I wasn't mad. I was impressed. Madison's entitlement wasn't just normal golden child energy, it was Olympic level. The confidence it takes to blow your own money, beg for someone else's, and still act like you are the victim? That's a skill. Rick and Karen were ready to call her themselves and shut it down, but I told them to hold off. Something in me had shifted during that phone call. I'd spent years cutting them off to avoid their chaos. Now, I kind of wanted to lean into it. Not because I was going to give them a dime, because I realized Madison had just given me the perfect setup. Here she was, openly lying about why she needed the money. Here my parents were, backing her up like the loyal little enablers they've always been. And here I was, with the receipts, literal and digital, proving she was full of it. So instead of blocking their calls, I started answering them, letting them rant, acting like I was thinking it over. I saved every bit of it. Screenshots, voicemails, the GoFundMe link. I even had a mutual friend send me screenshots of her bragging about her Italy shopping spree and Maldives getaway in a private group chat. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about making sure they all got exactly what they deserved. That night, Madison texted me one last time before going quiet. One way or another, I'm getting what I deserve. I smiled at my phone. Yeah, I thought. You will, just not the way you think. See, the thing about people like Madison and my parents, they don't know when to quit. If you let them think they're wearing you down, they'll just keep talking. And the more they talk, the more ammo they give you. So I decided not to block them. I decided to invite the chaos in, just long enough to get everything I needed. The next morning, Madison called again. I could tell she'd been rehearsing her reasonable voice. Jacob, I want us to work this out. I'm not asking for all of it, just enough to cover tuition. Uh-huh. How much is enough? I asked, already knowing the number was going to be insane. She didn't disappoint. 50,000, but that's just the base. There's also books, housing, and personal wellness, I cut in. Silence. Then, how do you know about that? I'm psychic, I said. She huffed and changed the subject, but I could hear the panic in her voice. That told me she knew she'd already said too much somewhere, and she was wondering where I'd heard it. Meanwhile, my parents were running their own campaign. My mom tried the "I'm just concerned" angle. Madison is under a lot of stress, Jacob. You've always been the strong one. You can handle life without this money, but she can't. Be the bigger person. Translation: you're not the golden child, so your life is supposed to be harder. I knew I had to keep them talking, so I started asking questions. So, if I were to help, what would the money be used for exactly? I'd make it sound like I was considering it, then sit back and let them dig themselves deeper. They sent me spreadsheets. Actual spreadsheets. Madison had made a college budget file, complete with color coding. Tuition and books were maybe 20% of it. The rest? A $7,000 wardrobe refresh, $3,500 for networking events, red, parties, and $9,800 for transportation upgrade, which was code for a new car. I forwarded the file to myself from 3 different email accounts. I wasn't losing that gem. About a week into this, I got a text from a mutual friend. One of those people who likes to stay neutral, but also enjoys a little drama. She sent me screenshots from Madison's private Instagram, posts of her at high-end boutiques, selfies with captions like, "Manifesting my dream car," and "No one can tell me I can't live the life I deserve." Gold. Pure gold. I started to see the bigger picture. Madison thought this was going to be a quick guilt trip and a payday. My parents thought they could pressure me like they always did when I was a kid. None of them realized they were handing me enough material to nuke their credibility in one shot. But timing was everything. You don't just dump all the ammo at once. You wait until they've gone so far that when you drop it, it's not just satisfying, it's irreversible. So I kept feeding them just enough hope to keep them talking. I mean, maybe I could help with part of it. I'll think about it. Let me see how much I can spare after my own expenses. Every time I said something like that, Madison's texts got friendlier. My mom started sending me "thinking of you" messages. My dad even asked about my job like he cared. It was fake, all of it, but it was perfect. Then Madison made her first big mistake. She sent me a picture of a luxury handbag she'd just bought, saying it was an investment piece for interviews. The tag was still on it, $1,200. And the kicker? She sent it while also texting me about how broke she was and how she didn't even have money for textbooks. I didn't respond. I just saved it. 2 days later, she made her second mistake. She posted on Instagram about a weekend trip she was taking with friends to relax before the semester starts. The location? A 5-star resort. The caption? "Self-care is essential to success." I didn't respond to that either. Saved it. By now I had screenshots of her shopping sprees, proof she blew her original college fund, the ridiculous college budget file, her parents, my parents in name only, openly backing her entitled nonsense in texts and voicemails. All I needed was one more thing, a clear sign they weren't going to stop unless they were publicly embarrassed. It came in the form of a group message. Madison added me, my parents, and about 6 other relatives into a chat titled "Family Support." She opened with, "I'm reaching out so everyone can hear how Jacob refuses to help his twin sister with her future, even though he's sitting on more than enough to change her life." My mom chimed in with, "We're just asking for fairness. He's been blessed and should share." That was it, the perfect setup. They'd taken it public within the family. They'd drawn their line, and they had no idea that I'd been standing on the other side with a match and a gallon of gasoline. I decided then and there, when I lit this up, I wasn't just going to shut them down, I was going to make sure they couldn't spin it later. No misunderstandings. No, that's not what we meant. Just their words, their actions, and their entitlement in full display. And once it was out there, there'd be no coming back from it. They wanted to make it public? Fine. I was going to make it permanent. I took a deep breath, opened the family support group chat, and started typing like I was about to submit a final paper I knew was going to get an A. First message: "Okay, since we're talking openly in front of everyone now, let's make sure we all have the same information. Here's Madison's full college budget request." Then I attached the spreadsheet she'd sent me. You could practically hear the group chat pause for a collective double take. Next message: "You'll notice that only 20% of this is actually for college. The rest is $7,000 for clothes, $9,800 for a transportation upgrade, and my personal favorite, $5,000 for personal wellness," which, judging by her receipts, means facials, yoga retreats, and maybe a subscription to some influencer's lifestyle course. Then I dropped the handbag picture with the $1,200 tag still on it. This was purchased yesterday. Not sure how this fits into struggling student territory, but hey, maybe it's a textbook holder. Silence in the chat for a second. Then my mom jumps in. That's not the point, Jacob. The point is that you've been blessed. I cut her off with the Instagram screenshots of Madison at the 5-star resort. And here's a little self-care trip from last weekend. Must be exhausting to balance college applications and poolside memos? Oh wait, I'm not supposed to mention the drinks, my bad. The chat starts blowing up. A couple of cousins leave the group immediately. One aunt sends the eyes emoji. My dad tries damage control. Jacob, this is unnecessary. We're family. So I went for the throat. I attached the proof from my mutual friend showing Madison bragging in a private group chat about how she'd already burned through her original college fund on Italy and the Maldives, along with her exact words, "It's fine. I'll just get Jacob to pay for the rest. He owes me anyway." I captioned it. So just to confirm, I owe you, because our parents dumped me on Rick and Karen when I was 12, so they could keep the better-looking one? I want to make sure I understand the logic. At this point, the group chat wasn't just awkward, it was nuclear fallout. My phone was buzzing like it was trying to escape the table. Relatives were DMing me separately saying they had no idea, or always suspected something was off about Madison's stories. Madison finally replied in the group, "You're taking everything out of context. That wasn't what I meant." And I laughed out loud reading it. Out of context? She literally spelled it out in perfect context. So I hit them with the finisher. Here's the context. Madison, you're not getting a dime. Mom, Dad, you raised her to believe she's entitled to whatever she wants, and now you're shocked it's blowing up in your faces. You could have left me alone, but you came for me, and now you've got the whole family watching. This is the last time I respond to any of you. Goodbye. Then I left the group. It felt incredible, like walking away from a dumpster fire you didn't start, but sure as hell finished. But I wasn't done. I sent the same evidence, every screenshot, every file, every photo, to the other side of the family, the ones who hadn't been in the chat. I didn't want there to be any chance Madison or my parents could spin it into Jacob was being mean, or he's making it up. Nope. The receipts were bulletproof. Within 24 hours, Madison's GoFundMe had been deleted. Not because she'd reached her goal, because the comments were brutal. One relative even dropped the whole screenshot album in the comments, so anyone clicking the link got the full story before they could even read her pitch. People were posting links to the screenshots I'd shared, calling her a scammer. Someone even posted, "College fund?" More like vacation fund. Rick and Karen couldn't stop smiling for a week. Rick even made popcorn one night and said, "This is better than Netflix." The best part? Madison hates losing face. She could have quietly taken the L and moved on. Instead, she doubled down and tried telling some relatives the pictures were old or edited. But the timestamps and metadata in the screenshots killed that lie instantly. Every time she tried to wiggle out of it, someone else sent me her excuse. And I'd send them the proof that she was lying again. Her reputation in the family tanked faster than a bad crypto coin. Invitations to parties? Gone. The proud parent posts my mom used to make about her? Vanished. Even her friends started unfollowing her online. And me? I didn't even have to lift a finger after that first blast. The mess just kept spreading on its own. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. For the first time, they had none over me. They couldn't guilt me, couldn't twist the story, couldn't hide what they'd been doing for years. I'd turned their little public shaming stunt into a career-ending PR disaster, and all I had to do was hand them their own words back. I thought that was the end of it. But I underestimated just how desperate entitled people can get when the gravy train gets derailed. Because a few months later, when their money troubles started catching up to them, my parents showed up at my door. Not to yell, not to guilt trip, to beg. And man, that was the sweetest moment of all. Picture it. Saturday afternoon, I'm in sweatpants, halfway through a plate of leftover lasagna, watching some guy on TikTok explaining how to redesign a 1-meter room with only galvanized steel. Life is peaceful. Then, knock, knock, knock. Not the casual kind, not neighbor borrowing sugar knock. This was sharp, rapid, desperate. I peek out the window and nearly drop my fork. Mom and Dad, on my porch. For a second, I thought maybe they were delivering an apology basket. You know, one of those overpriced arrangements with fancy cheeses and maybe a little card saying, "Sorry for being trash, parents." But nope, they were standing there in clothes that looked like they'd been slept in, with faces like someone had just repossessed their souls. I opened the door halfway, because I'm not stupid. Wow, the better child busy today. So you decided to slum it? Dad tries for a chuckle. Jacob, come on. That's not necessary. Oh, it's necessary. I told them. So, what brings you here? Forgot my birthday again and wanted to make up for the last 20 years? Mom jumps in, clasping her hands like she's auditioning for a church choir. We've made mistakes. We know that. But we're still family, and family should... Stop right there. I cut her off. Because the last time I heard the word family from you, it was followed by you asking for money. And judging by your faces, this isn't a social call. They exchange a look, the kind where you know they were hoping to warm me up before hitting me with the real reason they drove here. Finally, Dad says it. We're in a bit of a tight spot. I lean on the doorframe. A tight spot? Did Madison buy too many personal wellness packages? Mom sighs, like she's the one who's been wronged. The house is, well, it's in foreclosure. We've had some debts pile up, and your sister... Right on cue, Madison walks up from the driveway. Designer sunglasses on, holding a coffee cup the size of her head. Hey, Jacob, she says, like she's greeting a waiter she's about to stiff on a tip. I grin. Well, if it isn't the star of the GoFundMe scammer documentary. What's up, sis? She ignores that. We're just here to talk. Things have been hard and you have the means to help us. There it was. Not even dressed up this time. Just straight to give me your money. I tilt my head. You're right, Madison. I do have the means. And I'm using them for me. Crazy concept. I know. Dad steps forward like he's trying to reclaim some fatherly authority he never earned. We're asking for a loan. Interest-free. Just enough to get back on our feet. I laugh. You guys have been on your feet for years. They've just been stomping on everyone else's toes. And now that you've tripped, you're looking for me to be your crutch? Mom tries the guilt trip next. We took you in when you were a baby. Correction, I interrupt. You gave me away to Rick and Karen because I didn't match the holiday photo aesthetic. Let's not rewrite history. Madison scoffs. God, you're so dramatic. It's just money. You act like we're asking for your kidney. Yeah, I say. But see, the difference is if you took my kidney, you'd probably sell it and then still come back asking for the other one. Dad's jaw tightens. We're giving you a chance to be the bigger person here. I smirk. I've been the bigger person since I was 12. You guys were just too busy polishing Madison's halo to notice. They're all standing there now, shifting uncomfortably, realizing the old tactics aren't working. So Mom drops the fake humility and goes straight to desperation. If we lose the house, we'll have nowhere to go. Bummer, I say. But on the bright side, it's a lot easier to take family portraits when you don't have to worry about furniture blocking the shot. Madison tries one last time. Please, Jacob. Just enough to get back on our feet. I swear I'll pay you back. I lock eyes with her. Oh, like you were going to pay back your original college fund? Or like you were going to pay for your own trips instead of making a GoFundMe to scam relatives? Forgive me if your track record doesn't inspire confidence. There's a long pause. Nobody's smiling anymore. Madison looks like she's ready to spit nails. Dad's face is red. Mom's eyes are glossy, but not from sadness, from rage that I'm not folding. So I finish it. Calm, steady, no yelling. You all made your choice a long time ago. You picked your favorite. You backed her even when she was wrong. And you decided I was disposable. Now you're standing here because you need something from the disposable one. So here's my answer. The same one you gave me my whole life. No. And with that, I shut the door. I stood there for a second, listening. Nothing. No knocking, no shouting. Just the sound of footsteps back to the car and the engine starting. I went back to my lasagna, and let me tell you, it tasted amazing. Life after shutting that door on them was quiet. Quiet in the best way possible. No surprise knocks. No guilt trip voicemails. No random family group chats trying to stage an intervention for my conscience. Just me, Rick, Karen, my plans, and the inheritance exactly where it belonged. In my account. I didn't gloat out loud about it. Not because I was the bigger person, just because the satisfaction didn't need an audience. I knew. That was enough. Until the universe decided to give me an encore. It was a Friday night. I was out with 2 friends at a decent mid-range steakhouse. The kind of place where the menus don't have pictures and the waiters act like they invented the specials. We just finished demolishing a plate of appetizers when I got up to hit the bathroom. As I walked down the hall past the kitchen entrance, I caught a glimpse of a mop handle sticking out of a yellow bucket. And then I saw her. Madison. Hair tied back in a bun that had lost the fight hours ago. Blue janitor uniform, rubber gloves, mopping the tile floor with all the enthusiasm of someone scrubbing graffiti off a gas station wall. I froze. Then, without even trying to stop it, I started laughing. Out loud. The kind of laugh you can't fake because it comes from pure disbelief and joy colliding in your chest. She looked up and instantly went pale. "Oh my God," she muttered, trying to turn her face away. "No, no, don't hide," I said, already pulling out my phone. "Blue really suits you. Honestly, this is a better look than the Maldives bikini shots." "Delete that," she snapped, pointing at my phone as I took the first picture. Click. She tried to step behind the mop bucket, but I sidestepped with her. "Come on, sis, just one for the family album. We can put it next to the one where you held up the need money? Ask your real family sign." Click, click. Her jaw clenched. "Jacob, I swear to God." "You swear a lot of things," I cut in. "Like you'd pay back your college fund. Like you wouldn't waste money. Like you'd get what you deserved. Looks like you did." A couple of diners on their way to the bathroom slowed down, glancing at her, then at me. I gave them a little shrug and stage whispered, "We had a family reunion. She's in her work clothes." Madison's face flushed crimson. She muttered something I couldn't hear and practically sprinted through the swinging kitchen doors, abandoning the mop mid-haul. I stood there for a second, just grinning. Then I took one last picture of the lonely mop bucket and went back to my table like nothing had happened. Of course, I didn't just keep those pictures to myself. I sent them to my two closest cousins, the same ones who'd been in the family support chat when I dropped the receipts months ago. By the time I got home, one of them had already made a side-by-side meme. On the left, Madison posing in Italy with shopping bags. On the right, Madison in her blue janitor uniform, captioned, "Living the life she deserves." The next day, I woke up to a barrage of texts from her. "Delete those pictures now! You're obsessed with ruining me! I will sue you!" I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That's it. A few hours later, Mom called. I didn't answer. Then Dad called. Same result. Then they tried from a block number, which went straight to voicemail. That one I saved without listening. I didn't need to hear the script. I already knew it was some variation of "you've gone too far" mixed with "we're still family." What they didn't get was that this wasn't going too far. This was exactly as far as I wanted to go. This wasn't about revenge for every single thing they'd done. It was about letting them live in the reality they'd built, and occasionally walking by to enjoy the view. Madison had spent her whole life convinced she'd always be on top, that someone, me, my parents, the family, whoever, would swoop in to save her no matter how badly she screwed up. Seeing her in that uniform, mopping floors, and knowing there wasn't a rescue coming, that was better than any apology she could have faked. When I left the restaurant that night, I walked past the kitchen doors again. Madison was back at her post, head down, avoiding eye contact. I didn't stop. Didn't say a word. Just let my laughter trail behind me like perfume. Because blue really does suit her. Story 5. My fiancé asked for a break to date her ex, saying she'd come back if it didn't work, so I made sure she came back to nothing. Hey folks, after lurking around here for what feels like forever, I figured it's time to share what's been going on with me lately. Alright, so here's the deal. My name's Liam, I'm 30, and up until recently, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa. We'd been together for 4 years, and for most of that time, I was sure we were solid. But now I'm sitting here wondering how I didn't see this coming sooner. Tessa and I met through a mutual friend at a birthday party. She was funny, confident, and had this no-nonsense attitude that I really liked. I'd dated before, but no one clicked with me the way she did. We hit it off fast and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, like we were on the same page about everything. Careers, marriage, starting a family someday. She was freelancing as a graphic designer, and I worked in marketing, so our schedules kind of synced up. Life wasn't flashy, but it was good. We'd been talking about getting married for a while, but it wasn't until last year that I popped the question. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. Tessa seemed thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and said yes. That night, we started planning the future. A fall wedding, a small guest list, and this cozy little venue by the lake. It felt like everything was falling into place. Or so I thought. The first red flags weren't huge, obvious things. They were small, sneaky little cracks that I shrugged off because I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's excitement about the wedding planning started fading after a few months. At first, she was all in, sending me Pinterest boards, scrolling through wedding dresses, and asking me about the little details, like if I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But then it just stopped. I'd ask her stuff like, "Hey, have you decided on your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd brush it off. "Not yet. I'm still thinking about it," she'd say, over and over again. The same with her dress, the cake, even the music. Every decision we'd been so excited about just became this thing she wanted to delay. There's still time, she'd tell me. It was like the wedding was an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, Tessa had a lot going on with her work. I figured she'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that her lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding. It was about us. The real slap in the face came one night when we were hanging out with some friends. Someone brought that stupid TikTok game. We listen, but we don't judge. You've probably seen it. It's that game where you answer personal questions, and everyone's supposed to keep a straight face and not judge, although everyone judges. Anyway, everything was going fine until someone asked, if you could relive one relationship, which one would it be? Without even thinking, Tessa said, oh, probably Dylan. Just like that. Dylan, her college ex, the one who cheated on her. The second she said it, the room got awkwardly quiet. She laughed nervously and tried to backtrack, saying, I mean, not like I'd actually want to. It's just, a big part of my past. I wanted to call her out right there, but we were with friends, so I let it slide. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. What was that about Dylan? Why would you say you'd relive that relationship? She just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. It was a stupid game, Liam. Don't take it so seriously. She smiled and changed the subject. I didn't push it because, honestly, I didn't want to start a fight over something that might have been nothing. But deep down, it stuck with me. After that, her behavior got harder to ignore. She was on her phone more often, scrolling through her messages with this sly little smile. She started making vague excuses about why she couldn't hang out or why she'd cancel plans at the last minute. Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight, she'd say. Or, I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend. The excuses weren't exactly suspicious, but they were piling up. It felt like I was suddenly less of a priority. Then came the Friday night that changed everything. I got home early from work, excited to spend the evening with Tessa. I was thinking we could order in and binge watch something, just a low-key night. When I walked in, though, the vibe was off. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was just sitting there, staring at the screen, completely zoned out. Hey, I'm home, I said, trying to break the tension. You're early, she replied, like that was a bad thing. I brushed it off and went to the kitchen to start making dinner. But the silence in the house was suffocating. Usually, she'd be asking me how my day was or telling me about hers, but tonight, nothing. Finally, I turned around and asked, everything okay? She closed her laptop and looked at me. Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about. And just like that, my stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you know something bad's about to happen, but you can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in my hand. I walked over and sat across from her. All right, I said. What's going on? She hesitated, like she was trying to find the right words. Then she just came out with it. I've been thinking about us, and about Dylan. I swear, I almost laughed. Dylan, are you serious? What about him? She bit her lip and avoided my eyes. I think I need some time to figure things out. I want to take a break to see if there's still something there with him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to take a break so you can date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We're engaged. It's not like that, she said quickly, like she thought she could smooth this over. I need to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I promise I'll come back. That's when I realized just how deep her audacity ran. She thought I'd sit around and wait for her to figure out if I was good enough. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't blow up, didn't yell. I just sat there staring at her, wondering how the hell I didn't see this coming. I didn't even know how to respond at first. My fiancé, just told me she wanted to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What do you even say to that? Finally, I managed to ask, so what exactly does this break mean to you? My voice came out calm, way calmer than I felt. She straightened up a little, like she'd been preparing for this conversation. I think we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if what I'm feeling about Dylan is real, and you can take time to reflect on us too. I couldn't believe the nerve. Wait, I said, leaning forward. You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that? Tessa sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. It's not about you doing something wrong, Liam. This is about me figuring out what I need. I felt she had rehearsed this. The way she was talking, the way she avoided eye contact, it was like she'd already decided this was happening, and now she just needed me to roll with it. You know this sounds insane, right? I said. You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play What If with some guy who treated you like garbage. Her face hardened, and for the first time, I saw just how stubborn she could be. I'm not asking for permission, Liam. I'm telling you what I need. That one hit different. I wasn't just upset anymore. I was angry. I stood up and started pacing, trying to calm myself down. So what, Tessa? You're just gonna pack a bag and head over to Dylan's place? Is that your big plan? No, she snapped. It's not like that. I just, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision. You owe it to yourself, I repeated, laughing bitterly. And what about what you owe me? We're engaged, Tessa. We're supposed to be building a life together. And now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough? I never said you weren't good enough, she shot back, her voice rising. But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now, I'm not. That was it. It wasn't just that she wanted to explore things with Dylan. It was that she wasn't sure about me. After 4 years together, after all the plans we'd made, she still wasn't sure. It hit me all at once. She didn't even realize how hurtful and ridiculous her request was. She thought this was reasonable, like I'd just sit there while she worked through whatever nonsense was spinning in her head. I stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. You know what? Sure, I said, my tone flat. Take your break. She blinked, caught off guard by how easily I agreed. Liam, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. All right, if that's what you need. She hesitated, like she was expecting me to argue, to fight for her. When I didn't, she stood up, grabbed her laptop, and mumbled, I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time. Okay, I said simply. She glanced at me, unsure of how to respond, then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear her moving around, throwing stuff into a bag. I stayed on the couch, calm on the surface, but my mind was already turning. If she wanted her break so bad, fine. Let her have it. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close. She was gone, probably thinking she'd left me here to wait and wonder. Little did she know, I wasn't going to just sit around. She could have her fantasy, but I had my own plans now. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally snapped out of it. The first thing I did was grab my phone and call my buddy Noah. Noah's been my best friend since college, and he's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat things. If I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like my entire life had just fallen apart, he was the guy. Yo, what's up? He answered, his voice casual. Tessa wants to take a break to date her ex, I blurted out. There was a long pause. What the hell? He finally said. She said that to your face? Yep, I said, rubbing my temple. She packed a bag and left like it was no big deal. Said she needs clarity. Noah let out a low whistle. Dude, that's messed up. You okay? Not really, I admitted. I don't even know how to process this. 4 years, man. 4 years, and she's still hung up on Dylan. You want me to come over? He asked. We can order some food. Talk it out. Yeah, actually, that'd be great, I said. About an hour later, Noah showed up with pizza. He didn't even wait for me to explain the whole thing. He just listened as I vented about everything. By the time I finished, he was shaking his head. Bro, she's not worth this, he said. If she can't see what she has with you, that's on her. You're better off without someone who's going to treat you like a second option. I nodded, but it didn't make me feel any better. It wasn't just about losing Tessa. It was about losing the future I thought we were building together. I'd pictured a life with her. Marriage, kids, all of it, and now it was just gone. We stayed up late, talking and watching TV, and for the first time in hours, I started to feel a little less like the ground was crumbling beneath me. I didn't have a plan yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Tessa keep me on a leash while she figured out what she wanted. The next morning, my phone buzzed. I rolled over, half awake, and squinted at the screen. Tessa, of course. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a moment, my brain still foggy. She wants to talk? Seriously? After everything she laid out, now she wants to play the concerned fiancé? I thought she might have realized how stupid she sounded yesterday. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make coffee. There was no way I was dealing with this nonsense before caffeine. As I leaned against the counter, sipping my coffee, my mind raced. She really had the nerve to come back and act like I was the one who owed her patience. It wasn't anger I felt. At least not anymore. It was more disbelief. How could someone be so oblivious? So wrapped up in their own fantasy that they thought this kind of stunt was acceptable. But I wasn't about to let her see that. No. If she wanted to play this game, I'd play along. Except I wouldn't be the one losing. Finally, I picked up my phone and replied, Sure, come over later. Short, simple. Let her think she's still in control. A few hours later, there she was, standing at the door like nothing had happened. She looked polished, like she'd spent way too much time trying to perfect that calm, collected look. Her hair was done, makeup flawless. I could tell she'd rehearsed this. She was ready to sell me whatever she'd come up with. I stepped aside and let her in without a word. She walked in like she still belonged here, sitting on the couch like it was any other day. "Thanks for letting me come by," she said softly like she was doing me a favor. I leaned against the wall. "What's up?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped together like this was some big performance. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "Here we go. And I think I've come up with a way for us to move forward," she continued, her tone too measured, too rehearsed. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "All right, let's hear it." "Well," she said, clearly building up to something she thought was genius, "I think the best thing for us right now is to put the wedding plans on hold, just temporarily, while I take the time I need to get clarity on everything. That way, we don't lose the progress we've made, and we can pick things back up once I'm sure about us." I stared at her, waiting for the twist. She wasn't joking. She actually thought this was reasonable. "That's your big plan?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," she said, nodding like she'd just solved a world crisis. "It's practical, Liam. We've put so much time, effort, and money into this relationship. I don't want to throw it all away over something that might not even matter in the long run. Something that might not even matter." That phrase kept bouncing around in my head. She was talking about us, our relationship, like it was some investment portfolio she didn't want to write off. I felt a laugh bubble up, but I held it back. "Not yet. Let her keep going." "You're okay with this, right?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, like she was genuinely confused why I hadn't reacted yet. "Sure," I said, shrugging. Her eyes flicked to mine, like she didn't quite believe I'd agreed so easily. "Wait, you're okay with it?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone even. "If that's what you need, go for it." She blinked, clearly thrown off. She'd probably expected me to argue, to fight, maybe even beg her to stay. Instead, I gave her nothing. "I just don't want you to think this means I don't care," she added quickly, trying to fill the silence. "I just need some space to figure out what I really want. It's not forever." "Got it," I said, nodding. For a moment, she just stared at me, trying to read my face. But I wasn't giving her anything. Let her stew in her own awkwardness. She stood up, smoothing her hands over her jeans. "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit," she said. "It's not forever. We'll talk once I've had some time." "All right," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated, like she wanted to say something more. But then she just grabbed her bag and headed for the door. "Thanks for understanding," she said, pausing before stepping out. I just nodded again, keeping my face blank. After she left, I stood there for a moment, wondering how I couldn't see her as a wife anymore. She was gone, figuring out her ex, and she actually thought I was sitting here, waiting for her to figure out if I was good enough to fit into her perfect little fantasy life. But she didn't get it. This wasn't her decision anymore. I walked over to the window and watched her car pull out of the driveway. She was probably feeling relieved, thinking she'd bought herself some time to figure things out with Dylan. Let her think that. The truth was, I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to fight for someone who thought it was okay to keep me on the back burner while she explored her doubts. She could have her break. She could have Dylan. I was done playing along. The funny thing is, I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt free. It was like a switch had flipped in my head. All this time, I'd been worried about what she wanted, what she needed, how I could fix things. But now it was about me. I sat down on the couch. I could already hear her voice in my head, weeks or maybe months from now, trying to spin her way back in. "I made a mistake, Liam. I needed clarity, but now I see what I really want. Too late. Life doesn't work like that. I had no intention of sitting here, pining for her to come back. This wasn't about playing games or getting even. It was about moving forward. She'd made her choice, and so had I. I spent the next week setting things in motion. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clearing out every trace of her and taking back control. I started with the wedding plans. I grabbed my laptop and canceled everything. The venue, the photographer, the caterer. It all had to go. Some deposits were non-refundable, but who cares? It wasn't about the money. It was about closing this chapter for good. As I clicked through the emails, I couldn't help but smirk. She probably thought I was sitting at home, heartbroken, crying, waiting for her to know I'm better than her ex and come crawling back. She had no clue I was wiping her out of my life one email at a time. Then, the house. Funny thing, Tessa always acted like it was our home. She picked the paint colors, nagged me about throw pillows, and even insisted on those god-awful curtains in the living room. But here's what she never seemed to grasp. The house was mine. My name on the deed, my money in the mortgage. I called my buddy Noah, who hooked me up with a real estate agent. Within days, I had the paperwork ready to list it. My plan was simple. Sell the house, move on, and leave Tessa with absolutely nothing to come back to. She wanted space to figure out her life. She could do that from scratch. One part was almost too satisfying. Tessa had left all her stuff behind when she walked out. Clothes, books, And those ridiculous live, laugh, love signs she insisted on putting everywhere. I boxed it all up and drove it to her mom's place. No heads up, no texts. I just left it on the porch with a note. Here's your stuff. Good luck with Dylan. Was it petty? Maybe. Did I care? Not one bit. Then I sat there and waited. As expected, a week later, my phone buzzed. It was her. Can we talk? I think we need to clear the air. I laughed out loud. She must have realized her little fantasy with Dylan wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I couldn't resist seeing how this would play out. Sure, I replied. Come by tomorrow. The next day, she showed up, and the look on her face was priceless. She stepped inside and froze, her eyes darting around the bare walls, the empty shelves, the moving boxes stacked in the corner. What's going on here? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm selling the house, I said casually as if I'm talking to a neighbor, leaning against the counter. Her jaw dropped. You're what? Selling our house? It's not our house, Tessa, I said, letting that sink in. It's mine, and I don't need this much space anymore. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Why didn't you tell me? Why would I? You left, remember? I said, keeping my tone calm. Her face went pale. Wait, so you've been planning this? You're just moving on? I shrugged. What else was I supposed to do? Sit around and wait for you to come back? She shook her head, her voice rising. Liam, no. That's not what I meant when I said I needed time. I didn't think you'd... Didn't think I'd what? Take you seriously? I interrupted. You said you needed space to figure out if you wanted me or Dylan, so I gave it to you. She took a step closer, her voice trembling. But I didn't mean it like this. I thought you understood. I wasn't ending things. I just needed clarity. I laughed, shaking my head. Clarity? Tessa, you didn't want clarity. You wanted a safety net. You thought you could run off, test the waters with Dylan, and then waltz back here like nothing happened. Sorry, but that's not how it works. Her composure completely cracked. Liam, please, I made a mistake. Dylan, he's not what I thought. He hasn't changed. I was stupid. I see that now. Please, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I crossed my arms, meeting her tear-filled eyes with a steady gaze. You're right about one thing, Tessa. You were stupid, but not just for running back to Dylan. You were stupid for thinking I'd let you treat me like a backup plan. She grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. I wasn't. I swear. I panicked. I was scared. But I know now that it's you. It's always been you. Please, we can fix this. We can still get married. I yanked my arm away, shaking my head. No, we can't. You made your choice, Tessa. You chose doubt. You chose Dylan. And now, I'm choosing me. Her face crumpled, and she started sobbing. Liam, please. I'll do anything to fix this. It's too late, I said firmly. You broke this. You don't get to come back and pretend it never happened. She stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Finally, realizing there was nothing left to say, she turned and walked out the door. And with that, Tessa was out of my life, or so I thought. I sold the house, moved into my new apartment, and started putting everything about her behind me. I wasn't bitter. I just didn't have the energy to keep dragging her baggage along. I thought I'd handled it cleanly, that we'd moved on separately. But Tessa? She wasn't done, and when she made her move, it wasn't head-on. The first sign something was off came in a phone call from my mom. I'd barely said hello before she launched into it. Liam, why am I hearing from Aunt Sharon that the wedding is canceled? Is this true? I froze, the words catching me off guard. The only people who knew the wedding was off were me and Tessa. I hadn't even told my family yet because, frankly, I didn't want to deal with their reaction. But now the news was out. Where did Aunt Sharon hear that? I asked cautiously, already suspecting the answer. From Tessa's mom. She's been telling everyone that you called off the wedding. Apparently, Tessa is heartbroken, and you're being unreasonable. I nearly dropped the phone. Heartbroken. Unreasonable. The audacity of her spinning this like I was the bad guy was almost impressive. She had been the one to walk away, the one who wanted to figure things out with her cheating ex. And now she was painting me as the villain? Mom, that's not what happened, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Tessa and I aren't together anymore. She made her choice, and I moved on. Well, you need to do some damage control, she said, her tone sharp. Half the family is talking about this, and they all think you blindsided her. Damage control. That's what it came to now. Not only had Tessa managed to worm her way into my family's conversations, but she'd turned the entire thing into a pity party for herself. I should have let it go. I should have chalked it up to her being petty and left it at that. But when I got a call later that same day from my boss, I realized this wasn't just a family issue anymore. Hey, Liam, I wanted to check in, my boss said cautiously. Is everything okay? I heard from a friend of mine. Apparently your ex is going through a tough time. And she mentioned your name. My ex? Mentioned my name? At work? She didn't give any details, but you know how these things spread. Just making sure it's not going to cause distractions here. I clenched my jaw, the pieces falling into place. Tessa hadn't just been telling her side of the story to family, she was dragging my name into her personal sob story with anyone who would listen. I thanked my boss for letting me know and hung up. My blood was boiling. This wasn't about closure or fixing things anymore. She was deliberately trying to sabotage my life, painting herself as the victim to anyone who would give her 5 minutes of attention. That was the last straw. I'd stayed quiet up until now, thinking it was the mature thing to do. But if she wanted to play games, I wasn't going to sit back and let her rewrite the narrative. The next day, I sent a group message to both of our families, keeping it short and to the point. Hi everyone, I wanted to address something. Tessa and I are no longer engaged, and it was a mutual decision after a lot of difficult conversation. I'd appreciate it if we could all respect each other's privacy and move forward without assigning blame. Thank you. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to cut off her nonsense before it spread further. Then I blocked her on everything. Phone, social media, email. She didn't deserve access to my life anymore. Not after how she'd tried to twist things. The fallout wasn't easy. My mom wasn't thrilled about me handling it so bluntly, and a couple of relatives still whispered about how I could throw away such a good thing. But I knew the truth, and that was enough. All what my ex-fiancée did was show me how little she respected me or the relationship we'd had. If anything, she made me even more grateful that I'd cut her out for good. So here I was, finally drawing the line. Blocking her was like flipping a switch, cutting the power to the drama machine she'd been running for weeks. It wasn't just about silencing her. It was about reclaiming my peace. The first thing I did was take control of the narrative. People love to fill in the blanks when you stay quiet, and I'd given Tessa way too much space to craft her story. So I called up the people whose opinions mattered to me, my close friends, my siblings, and my mom. I laid it all out, no embellishments, just the facts. Look, I told my mom over coffee, I didn't throw away a good thing. She bailed on me for her ex, plain and simple. I tried to be civil, but she's out here spinning tales like she's the victim. I'm not letting her trash my name. Mom gave me her classic disapproving look, the one that could make a grown man feel like a scolded teenager. I get it, Liam, but you could have been more tactful. Tactful? Mom, she's airing our dirty laundry to anyone who'll listen. I'm done playing nice. That seemed to click for her. She sighed, finally conceding, I just want you to be happy. Don't let her drag you down. From there, I made it my mission to shut down the whispers wherever they popped up. If someone brought up Tessa, I gave them the short version. It didn't work out, and she's not the person I thought she was. End of story. Most people got the hint and dropped it, but a few needed a bit more directness. Like my cousin Mark, who cornered me at a family barbecue. Hey man, I heard you left Tessa high and dry. What's up with that? I stared at him, barely believing the audacity. You heard wrong, Mark. She ditched me to figure things out with her ex. If you want the full story, ask her. I'm not playing the gossip game. He backed off pretty quick after that. While I was busy cleaning up the social mess, I also had to deal with work. My boss, thankfully, was chill about the whole thing. I explained the situation in private, emphasizing that it wouldn't affect my performance. He nodded and said, I figured there was more to it. Just keep your head down, and don't let it get to you. But Tessa wasn't done trying to stir the pot. A week later, I got an email from a mutual friend of ours, Sarah. She wasn't taking sides, but she felt the need to share something. Hey Liam, I thought you should know Tessa's been posting stuff online. Nothing outright nasty, but it's obvious she's talking about you. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I thanked Sarah and checked it out. Sure enough, Tessa had been posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal and heartbreak. Stuff like, some people will throw away diamonds to chase stones. Real subtle. At first, I was tempted to respond, to call her out for the nonsense, but then I stopped myself. Why stoop to her level? She wanted a reaction, and I wasn't giving her one. Instead, I reported her post for harassment and moved on. That was the real turning point for me, realizing I didn't owe her or anyone an explanation anymore. My life wasn't a public forum for her to dissect and manipulate. If she wanted to live in the past, that was her problem, not mine. One night, sitting with my buddy Jake, he said something that really stuck with me. Man, you dodged a bullet. Imagine if all this came out after you were married. You're better off, trust me. He was right. As painful as it had been, breaking things off with Tessa, before we tied the knot was the best thing that could have happened. It wasn't just about avoiding the drama. Being with her had blinded me to what I really wanted in a partner. Someone who had my back, not someone who'd turn on me the second things got tough. By the time a few months had passed, Tessa's antics started to fade into the background. People moved on, and so did I. The family stopped bringing her up, The whispers at work died down, and her online posts eventually dried up. It was like she finally realized she couldn't keep milking the situation for sympathy. I'd like to say I forgave her, but honestly, I didn't. And that's okay. Not every wrong has to be forgiven to be left behind. I don't hate her. I just don't care anymore. The real closure came when I realized I wasn't waiting for her to apologize or for people to see my side. I was living my life for me, not for anyone else's validation. So I guess all I want to say is that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that save you. Cutting ties with Tessa wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It taught me to trust my gut, to stand up for myself, and to never settle for less than I deserve. Looking back now, I don't regret a thing. I'm in a better place, mentally, emotionally, and even physically. Life's too short to waste on people who don't value you. And if I've learned anything, it's this. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. And with that, this chapter of my life is officially closed. Thanks for sticking until the end. Story 6. My brother had the police drag away my 10-year-old son in handcuffs over a false accusation. My parents watched and did nothing. What I did next destroyed all their careers. All right, Reddit. My brother called the cops on my 10-year-old son, claiming he stole a $15,000 Rolex. My parents backed him up. Police took my kid away in handcuffs while I was saving someone's life at the hospital. When I found out what really happened, I made sure everyone involved paid for it. Here's the whole story. I'm Carter, 40 male, cardiologist at a major hospital in California. Decent job, decent house in the suburbs, wife Rachel and 2 kids. Dylan, who was 10 at the time, and Sophie, who was 6. We live pretty quiet lives. I work long hours at the hospital, come home, help with homework, weekends are for family time. Nothing fancy, just solid middle-class existence doing what I love and making good money doing it. The path to becoming a cardiologist wasn't easy. 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, 3 years of internal medicine residency, then another 3 years of cardiology fellowship. By the time I was done with training, I was 32 years old with massive student debt and just starting to build my career. But I loved the work, the precision required, the direct impact on patient survival, the satisfaction of fixing something as complex as the human heart. Now at 40, I've been an attending cardiologist for 8 years. I specialize in interventional procedures, the kind where you thread catheters through arteries, place stents, occasionally crack a chest open when things go really wrong. It's high-pressure work that requires steady hands and clear thinking under stress. Lives depend on you making the right call in critical moments. That responsibility never gets lighter, but you learn to carry it. My hospital salary is solid, around $380,000 annually, plus bonuses for being on call and handling emergency procedures. Rachel and I bought our house 5 years ago, a 4-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. We're not flashy people. Rachel works part-time as a school nurse, mostly because she likes having her own career and contributing, not because we need the money. We save, we invest, we live below our means. Financial stability matters to both of us. The medical field isn't for everyone. The hours are brutal, the stress is constant, and you're literally holding people's lives in your hands. But there's something deeply satisfying about fixing a failing heart, about sending someone home to their family when they arrived at death's door. That satisfaction is what keeps me going through the 60-hour weeks and emergency calls at 3 a.m. My parents live about 20 miles away in this big Spanish-style house they bought back in the 90s. The place sits on about half an acre with this massive backyard that's basically a park. They've got a patio with a built-in grill, a fire pit, even a small vegetable garden my mom tends to obsessively. The backyard was always the main draw for family gatherings. Plenty of space for kids to run wild while adults talked inside. We still saw them most weekends because family matters, or at least I thought it did back then. Sunday lunches were tradition. My mom would cook these elaborate meals. My dad would grill if the weather was good, and we'd all sit around their dining table like some kind of Norman Rockwell painting. Dylan loved going there, would ask all week when we'd visit Grandma and Grandpa again. Sophie was always quieter about it, more reserved, but I figured that was just her personality. She's naturally introverted, or so I thought. My dad's retired now. Spent 35 years as an electrical engineer before hanging it up 5 years ago. Solid career, good retirement package, owns the house outright. He's the practical type. Fixes things himself, has opinions about politics and sports. Pretty standard boomer dad. My mom was a stay-at-home parent when Blake and I were growing up, then went back to work part-time doing administrative stuff at a local community college. She retired 3 years ago and now fills her time with gardening, book club, and being overly involved in everyone's business. Then there's my brother Blake. 4 years older than me, hotshot attorney with his own law firm. Guy's made a name for himself in California legal circles, the kind of connections where he knows judges, prosecutors, half the police department on a first-name basis. He loves reminding everyone about it too. Can't have a family dinner without Blake dropping some story about winning a case or networking with someone important. Blake started his own practice about 10 years ago, after spending 5 years at a mid-size firm building his reputation and client list. He focuses on criminal defense, primarily white-collar stuff, embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, the kind of cases where clients can afford to pay premium rates. His firm grew to about 8 employees, 3 other attorneys, 2 paralegals, and support staff. He was pulling in somewhere north of $500,000 a year, maybe more. He never gave exact numbers, but loved dropping hints about his success. The guy drove a Tesla, wore Rolex watches, yeah, the irony, lived in a McMansion in one of those gated communities where the HOA fines you if your grass is half an inch too long. His wife Nicole came from money. Her dad owned a chain of car dealerships across Southern California. They sent their son Austin to private school, took European vacations every summer, basically lived the lifestyle Blake thought proved he'd made it. And Blake never let anyone forget it. Every family gathering turned into his personal highlight reel. Stories about his latest high-profile case, name-dropping judges he played golf with, mentioning which prosecutor owed him a favor. My mom ate it up, constantly talking about my successful attorney son to anyone who'd listen. My dad was more subtle but clearly proud of Blake's achievements. Blake and I have never been close. He's always had this superiority thing going, constantly trying to one-up me or make subtle digs about my career versus his. Must be nice working for someone else, he'd say about my hospital job, conveniently ignoring that I'm a specialist making excellent money while he's drowning in business overhead and client acquisition costs. When are you going to start your own practice? He'd ask, like working at a major hospital was somehow settling. The competition between us went back to childhood. Blake was the firstborn, the golden child, the one who got into the best college and then law school. I was the younger brother who chose medicine, which my parents supported but never celebrated quite the same way. When Blake passed the bar, my parents threw him a huge party, invited half the neighborhood. When I finished my cardiology fellowship, we had a family dinner. That pretty much sums up the dynamic. What really grated on me was how Blake treated Rachel and the kids. He'd make these condescending comments about Rachel working part-time, suggesting she was wasting her education by not pursuing a full-time career. Never mind that Rachel made a deliberate choice to have more flexibility for our family. Blake couldn't understand anything that didn't fit his definition of success. Maximum income, maximum prestige, maximum everything. With Dylan and Sophie, Blake was dismissive at best. He'd compare them unfavorably to Austin, talking about Austin's private school achievements, his test scores, his plans for Ivy League college. Dylan was a good student at his public school, made friends easily, excelled at sports. But to Blake, that was basic, nothing impressive. Sophie's quiet nature made her practically invisible to him. He'd forget her name sometimes, call her the little one, when he bothered acknowledging her at all. The irony is that Austin's a decent kid, despite Blake's parenting. Quiet, polite, seems almost embarrassed by his dad's constant bragging. I'd see him playing with Dylan and Sophie at family gatherings, actually being a good older cousin, and wonder how he turned out okay with Blake as his role model. Maybe Nicole balanced it out. She's always been more down-to-earth than her husband, even if she puts up with his nonsense. My parents' dynamic with Blake and me was textbook golden child versus scapegoat. Blake could do no wrong. If he missed a family event, it was because he was so busy and important. When I missed one due to an emergency surgery, it was, can't you find someone else to cover? Blake's expensive lifestyle was aspirational. My more modest choices were playing it too safe. I learned years ago not to engage with his nonsense. Let him have his spotlight, his need to feel superior. I had my career, my family, my own definition of success that didn't require constant validation. But that dynamic, the one where Blake was always right and I was expected to defer, set the stage for what happened. In Blake's world, he was the authority figure, and everyone else, including me, fell in line. That included believing him over a 10-year-old child. He's married to Nicole. They've got a 15-year-old son, Austin. Blake treats that kid like he's training him to be the next Supreme Court justice. Everything's about legacy and success and making the right connections. Meanwhile, my approach with Dylan and Sophie is simpler. Be good people, work hard, treat others with respect. Radical concept, I know. My relationship with Blake has been strained for years. He's the golden child, the successful lawyer, The one my parents brag about at every opportunity. I'm just the doctor. Solid career, nothing flashy, not worth mentioning unless someone asks directly. That dynamic probably should have warned me about what was coming, but you don't expect your own family to pull what they pulled. The incident happened on a Saturday in June 2023, almost 2 years ago now, but those memories still hit me sometimes when I'm trying to sleep. I wake up thinking about my son scared and confused in a police station, and the rage comes flooding back all over again. That morning started normal enough. We'd planned the visit earlier in the week. My mom had called Tuesday, asking if we'd come for lunch Saturday. She wanted to make her famous lasagna. The kids were excited, especially Dylan. He'd been talking all week about playing soccer with Grandpa in the backyard. Sophie was quieter about it, but that was her default mode. She preferred staying inside with books and coloring, rather than running around. Saturday morning, I spent an hour at home reviewing patient files and surgical notes. Had a complex case scheduled for Monday, valve replacement on a 62-year-old with severe stenosis, and wanted to be prepared. Rachel made breakfast while the kids watched cartoons, this peaceful domestic scene that felt perfectly ordinary. No warning signs that in a few hours our lives would implode. Rachel drove us to my parents' house. I'm honestly terrible at driving, and she's gotten used to being my chauffeur for family visits. It's not that I can't drive, more that I'm overly cautious to the point of annoyance. 15 miles under the speed limit, excessive brake usage, treating every merge like a military operation. Rachel's patient about it, takes over whenever we're going somewhere together. The kids don't even question it anymore. Mom drives, Dad navigates and handles the radio. The whole drive over, Dylan was excited, bouncing in his seat, asking if Grandpa had fixed the soccer goal in the backyard. My dad had promised to repair the net last time we visited, and Dylan was holding him to it. Dylan's always been like that. Energetic, enthusiastic about everything, trusting that adults will keep their promises. That trust was about to get shattered in the worst way possible. Sophie sat quietly next to him, looking out the window, not saying much. I asked her a few times if she was okay, but she just nodded and gave me these one-word answers. Fine. Yes. Okay. I remember thinking maybe she was tired or just wanted to stay home that day. Sometimes kids get moody about family obligations. If I'd known what was coming, I would have respected that instinct, turned the car around, and kept my children safe. Looking back, maybe Sophie sensed something I didn't. Kids have that instinct sometimes. That feeling when something's off, even if they can't articulate why. She'd always been more cautious around Blake's family than Dylan was. Dylan trusted everyone until given a reason not to. Sophie observed first, decided later. She'd sit quietly during family gatherings, watching interactions, reading the room in a way most 6-year-olds don't. There was this one incident months earlier where Blake had snapped at Dylan for running too close to his car, worried about fingerprints on the Tesla. Dylan had been hurt by the harshness, but bounced back within minutes. Sophie, who'd been watching from the porch, refused to go near Blake for the rest of that visit. She'd physically maneuver to keep someone between her and him. This deliberate avoidance that Rachel and I noticed, but didn't push her on. Kids are allowed to have preferences about relatives. We arrived around 9 in the morning. Blake's family was already there. Him, Nicole, and Austin sitting in the living room. Blake barely looked up from his phone when we walked in, just gave me a brief nod before going back to whatever important email he was reading. The guy was always on his phone, constantly checking messages like he was managing some crisis even on weekends. Austin was doing the same thing teenagers do, glued to his screen, earbuds in, existing in whatever digital world mattered more than actual family time. Nicole greeted us warmly, though. She's always been the more personable half of that marriage. She hugged Rachel, complimented Sophie's dress, asked about my work. Normal small talk that made the morning feel comfortable. My mom was in the kitchen prepping lunch, even though we wouldn't eat for hours. She's one of those people who starts cooking at dawn for a 1 p.m. meal, needs everything perfect. My dad was outside messing with the grill even though it was too early to start cooking. This was their routine. Stay busy, keep moving, make sure everything's just right for family gatherings. The first hour went like always. Dylan ran straight to the backyard like he'd been released from captivity. He grabbed the soccer ball from the garage, started dribbling around the grass, setting up his own game since Grandpa was still fiddling with the grill. I could hear him out there, talking to himself, narrating his own soccer match like kids do. Dylan cuts left, beats the defender, shoots. Goal. Sophie stayed close to Rachel, sitting quietly on the couch, occasionally coloring in a book she'd brought. She had this whole art supply bag. Crayons, markers, coloring books, sketch paper. She'd set up in a corner of the room, creating her own little world while adults talked around her. That was her comfort zone, being present, but not necessarily participating. I talked with my parents about work, the hospital, boring adult stuff. Shared a few stories about recent cases. Nothing with patient details, just general anecdotes about the challenges of interventional cardiology. My dad asked questions about the technical side, genuinely interested in the procedures. My mom mostly just listened, occasionally commenting about how stressful my job must be. Blake chimed in occasionally with stories about his latest case, making sure everyone knew how brilliant and connected he was. He was defending some CEO accused of embezzling from his own company, and the way Blake told it, he was single-handedly saving an innocent man from a corrupt justice system. Never mind that the evidence was apparently pretty damning. In Blake's version, he was the hero outsmarting lazy prosecutors. My mom hung on his every word, asking follow-up questions, expressing amazement at his legal prowess. My dad nodded along, clearly proud. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about how Blake probably bills $600 an hour to defend people who stole from their employees. But whatever. Not my circus. Standard family gathering protocol. Everyone playing their assigned roles. Blake, the successful attorney, me, the stable doctor, my parents, the proud grandparents, Rachel, the supportive wife, the kids being kids. Surface-level harmony masking all the underlying dynamics and resentments. Then at 10 a.m., my phone rang. Hospital, emergency. My colleague's voice was urgent. Serious accident, victim in critical condition, heart trauma, needed immediate surgery, or the patient wouldn't make it through the afternoon. This is the reality of being a cardiologist. Emergencies don't care that it's Saturday or that you're at a family lunch. Someone's heart stops working right, and suddenly your weekend plans don't matter anymore. I stood up immediately. Rachel volunteered to drive me. She knew in an emergency situation, having someone who could actually drive properly would save precious minutes. Before we left, I checked on the kids. Dylan was playing in the backyard, happy as could be. Sophie was still on the couch with her coloring book. I found my mom in the kitchen and asked her to watch the kids, give them lunch when it was time. We'd be back as soon as the surgery was done. She agreed immediately. Why wouldn't she? These were her grandchildren. My parents had watched them dozens of times before without incident. I had zero reason to think this time would be any different. If I could go back to that moment, if I had any idea what was about to happen, I would have grabbed both kids and brought them to the hospital to sit in the waiting room. But you don't know these things. You trust your family to do the absolute bare minimum. Don't harm your grandchildren. Apparently, that was too much to ask. Rachel and I got to the hospital in 20 minutes. The patient was already prepped for surgery, and the situation was worse than initially reported. Severe chest trauma, damaged ventricles, internal bleeding that was filling the pericardial cavity. We spent 3 intense hours in that operating room, working to stabilize the heart, repair the damage, get this person's cardiovascular system functioning again. The surgery was successful. By 1 p.m., the patient was stable, moved to ICU, with a decent prognosis for recovery. I felt that familiar rush of satisfaction. Another life saved, another family that wouldn't be planning a funeral. Rachel and I grabbed a quick lunch at the hospital cafeteria, then headed back to my parents' house to pick up the kids. We arrived around 2 p.m. The second I walked through the door, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. Dylan wasn't there. His laughter, his constant energy, the sound of him running around, all absent. The living room was dead quiet. Sophie was curled up on the couch, her face pale, looking smaller than her 6 years. My parents sat across from her looking uncomfortable. Blake's whole family was there, also silent, with this weird tension in the air that made my stomach drop. As soon as Sophie saw Rachel, she jumped off the couch and ran over, grabbing onto Rachel like she was drowning, and Rachel was a life raft. Her little shoulders were shaking. Then she looked up at Rachel and said in this tiny, scared voice, "Mom, the police took Dylan away." Time stopped. I literally couldn't process what she just said. Police? Dylan? My 10-year-old son who was supposed to be playing in the backyard? The words didn't make sense together, like hearing someone say the sun rose at midnight. I spun around to face my parents, then Blake. Where's Dylan? What the hell does she mean the police took him? Blake stood up slowly with this infuriating calm expression on his face. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Your son stole my Rolex. Worth about 15 grand. He wouldn't admit it and give it back, so I called the cops." The room tilted. I actually had to steady myself against the wall because the rage and confusion hit me so hard I felt dizzy. You called the police on my 10-year-old son? Are you completely insane? He stole from me, Blake said, like he was explaining basic math. Actions have consequences. The cops will teach him to behave properly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to explain that this was some kind of sick joke, that obviously they'd intervened, that obviously they'd stopped this madness. But they just sat there, silent, not meeting my eyes. My mom looked uncomfortable. My dad looked tired. Neither said a word to defend their grandson. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "You let them take Dylan away? Your grandson? He's 10 years old." My dad finally spoke, his voice quiet. "Blake said Dylan stole the watch. We asked Dylan multiple times if he took it. He kept saying no, but Blake was certain. The police came and took Dylan to the station for questioning. For questioning." I repeated the words slowly. "You let police take my child for questioning without calling me first?" "You were in surgery," my mom said weakly. "We didn't want to disturb you during an emergency operation." The logic was so twisted I actually laughed. "So instead you let police take my son away and traumatize my daughter watching it happen?" Blake jumped in, still with that calm, infuriating tone. "Dylan kept lying about not taking the watch. Sometimes kids need to learn the hard way that lying has consequences." That's when something in me snapped. The protective parent instinct, the rage at this injustice, the absolute betrayal by my own family, it all crystallized into cold, focused fury. I pulled out my phone and called the police station, asking where my son was and demanding to speak with whoever was handling his case. They confirmed Dylan was there, being questioned about theft. I told them I was his father, I'd never been notified, and I was coming immediately. Then I turned to Blake and said very clearly, "You just destroyed your own life. I hope that watch was worth it." He actually smirked. "Don't be dramatic. It's just questioning." Rachel and I left immediately, taking Sophie with us. The entire drive to the station, Sophie held Rachel's hand, silent tears running down her face. When I asked her what happened, she said in this small voice, "Dylan didn't take anything. I was with him the whole time. Uncle Blake is lying." At the police station, I found my son sitting in an interrogation room. A 10-year-old child in a room designed to break adult criminals. The room was exactly what you'd picture. Gray walls, metal table bolted to the floor, that two-way mirror everyone knows is there. Dylan looked so small in that chair, dwarfed by the institutional furniture. His eyes red from crying, his whole body language screaming fear and confusion. When he saw me walk in, his face crumpled. He jumped up from the chair and ran over, throwing his arms around me, his little body shaking with sobs he'd been holding in. I could feel how tense he was, wound tight with stress and fear. Kids aren't supposed to feel like this. They're supposed to feel safe, protected, secure. My son felt like a cornered animal. "Dad, I didn't take the watch," he said between sobs, his voice muffled against my shirt. "I promise I didn't. I told them so many times, but nobody believes me. Uncle Blake keeps saying I'm lying, but I'm not, Dad. I swear I'm not." The desperation in his voice broke my heart. This was a kid who'd never been in trouble, never lied about anything significant, suddenly being treated like a criminal. I held him and felt my heart breaking, and my rage building simultaneously. "I believe you, buddy. I know you didn't take anything. We're going to fix this." "They kept asking me the same questions over and over," Dylan continued, words tumbling out now that he felt safe. "Where did you hide the watch? Why did you take it? What did you do with it?" I kept saying I didn't take it, but they wouldn't listen. Uncle Blake was there too, telling them I was lying. Why would he say that, Dad? Why would he lie about me? That's what gutted me most. Dylan couldn't comprehend why an adult he trusted would falsely accuse him. His worldview was simple. Adults told the truth, adults protected kids, family especially. Blake had shattered that fundamental trust. The officer handling the case, some guy named Wright, came over with his report. He was maybe early 40s, looked tired, probably nearing end of shift. The boy maintains he didn't take the watch. We've questioned him for about 90 minutes now. Without evidence or an admission, we can't really proceed further. We'll need to wait for the complainant to provide more proof of theft. 90 minutes, I repeated, keeping my voice level despite wanting to scream. You questioned my 10-year-old son for 90 minutes without his parents present? Without even calling us first? Wright had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting his weight, not quite meeting my eyes. The complaint came from his uncle, a lawyer with good standing in the community. Blake is well known to the department, has worked with us on numerous cases. The grandparents confirmed they had legal guardianship at the time since you were unreachable during surgery. We followed protocol for questioning a minor in custodial supervision. Protocol. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Did this protocol include checking if the watch was actually missing? Or did you just take my brother's word and drag my child away in handcuffs based on nothing but his accusation? Did you verify that anything was actually stolen before you traumatized a 10-year-old? Wright's expression changed. A flash of something, guilt maybe, or realization that they'd screwed up. We operate on good faith when complaints come from attorneys and family members. Blake insisted the watch was taken during the visit and that your son was the only person who could have taken it. He was very convincing in his certainty. I'm sure he was. My brother's very good at being convincing. That's literally his job. But being convincing doesn't make him right. I was struggling to keep my voice calm, professional, when what I wanted was to start breaking things. And the handcuffs? Was that protocol too? Wright looked even more uncomfortable. Handcuffs weren't strictly necessary given the child's age and the nonviolent nature of the accusation. But Blake, the uncle, insisted on standard arrest procedure. Said it was important the boy understand the seriousness of theft charges. That sometimes kids need to experience consequences to learn. That sealed it. Blake hadn't just called the cops. He'd specifically requested they traumatize Dylan, handcuff him, treat him like a dangerous criminal, all to teach him a lesson about a theft that never happened. This wasn't about a missing watch. This was about power, about Blake asserting dominance, about putting my kid in his place. I want to file a formal complaint, I said, my voice cold and precise, against my brother for filing a false report and against whoever authorized questioning a minor for 90 minutes without parental notification. I also need copies of everything. The report, the interrogation notes, recordings if you have them, all of it. Every word, every document, every piece of evidence that will show exactly what happened here today. Wright nodded slowly, looking like he realized that this situation was about to become a major problem for everyone involved. I can arrange that. But sir, I have to tell you, your brother has significant connections with the department. Multiple officers here have worked with him professionally. The captain considers him a friend. This could get complicated if you pursue it. Let it get complicated, I said, meeting his eyes directly. I don't care if he's best friends with the police chief and the governor. He traumatized my child over something my child didn't do. That's going to have consequences. And if those consequences make some people uncomfortable, well, they should have thought of that before they handcuffed a 10-year-old based solely on the word of his uncle. Wright nodded again, looking resigned. I'll get you those copies. For what it's worth, your son was consistent in his denials throughout the questioning. Never wavered, never changed his story. Didn't show any of the typical behavioral signs of deception. I noted that in my report. Then why keep questioning him for 90 minutes? Because your brother kept insisting we weren't pressing hard enough, that the boy was a skilled liar, that we needed to push harder to get the truth. He was very persistent. Of course he was. Blake probably enjoyed watching Dylan squirm, enjoyed demonstrating his power, enjoyed the whole performance. We got Dylan and Sophie home. Rachel ordered pizza because cooking was the last thing on anyone's mind. Dylan sat on the couch between us, still shaking occasionally, looking smaller than he should. Sophie sat on Rachel's other side, holding her mom's hand. Both kids were traumatized by different aspects of the same nightmare. That night, after the kids were finally asleep, Rachel and I sat in our bedroom and planned our next move. I called a friend from medical school who'd gone into medical malpractice law, asked for a referral to someone who handled false accusations and police misconduct. He gave me a name, Jennifer Walsh, attorney who specialized in exactly this kind of case. Monday morning, I took a personal day and went to see Walsh. Brought all the police documents, explained the entire situation, held nothing back about Blake's connections or my parents' complicity. She listened to everything, took notes, and then sat back with this expression I couldn't quite read. "This is bad," she said finally, "but it's also incredibly actionable. Your brother filed a false police report. The officer violated procedure by not notifying you immediately when your minor child was taken into custody. And there's the question of the watch itself. Has your brother even proven it's actually missing?" "No idea," I admitted. "For all I know, he put it somewhere and forgot where. Or he's lying entirely to make a point." "Then we start there," Walsh said. "We demand proof the watch was stolen. We demand the interrogation records and recordings. We document everything that was done to your son and build a case not just against your brother, but against the department for how they handled this. Your brother's connections might have gotten him this far, but they won't protect him from documented misconduct." Over the next week, Walsh filed motions and demands. The police department was forced to turn over all records of Dylan's interrogation. We got recordings of the whole thing. 90 minutes of my scared child insisting he didn't take the watch, while officers and Blake pressed him to confess. It was one of the hardest things I've ever listened to, hearing Dylan's voice getting smaller and more frightened as the questioning continued. The recording also captured Blake coaching the officers on how to question Dylan, which questions to ask, how to pressure him, an attorney using his knowledge of interrogation tactics against his own nephew. That recording alone was enough to turn my stomach. Walsh also subpoenaed Blake's financial records and phone logs, looking for proof that the watch even existed and was actually missing. Turned out Blake had filed an insurance claim for the watch 6 months earlier, claiming it was damaged beyond repair. He'd been paid out $14,000 by his insurance company. The watch he claimed Dylan stole either didn't exist anymore, or Blake was committing insurance fraud on top of filing a false police report. When Walsh presented this evidence to the district attorney, they opened an investigation immediately. Blake's connections suddenly didn't matter so much when he was potentially facing multiple felony charges. The DA's office loved cases involving corrupt lawyers, made for good press, and helped clean up the legal profession's reputation. While this was happening, my parents started calling. First my mom crying, asking why I was escalating things unnecessarily. Then my dad, using his stern voice, telling me I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. Blake called too, alternating between threatening me with legal action and trying to act like we could work this out between us. I blocked them all. Every number, every email address, every possible way they had to contact me. Rachel did the same. We were done being the family members who swallowed mistreatment in the name of keeping the peace. My parents showed up at our house one evening, 3 weeks after the incident. I saw them through the window. They had gift bags, probably thinking they could smooth this over with presents for the kids. I didn't even open the door. I yelled through it. "Leave now, or I'm calling the cops." "Carter, please," my mom called back. "We need to talk about this like adults." "Adults don't let their grandchildren get arrested over lies," I replied. "Adults don't side with the liar over the victim. Get off my property." My dad tried next. "Son, Blake made a mistake. Can't we move past this? He's your brother." That's what pushed me over the edge. He stopped being my brother when he handcuffed my son. You stopped being my parents when you let it happen. This isn't a mistake. This was a choice. All of you made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. They left eventually, but not before I called 911 and reported them for trespassing and attempted witness intimidation. The police documented it, added it to the growing case file. Every action they took to try to make this go away just dug their hole deeper. The legal process moved forward. Dylan was examined by a child psychologist who documented the trauma from his interrogation: anxiety, nightmares, fear of police, trust issues. The report was damning, painting a clear picture of how this incident had damaged a child who'd done nothing wrong. Blake was charged with filing a false police report and attempted insurance fraud. Wright, the officer who'd conducted the interrogation, was charged with violating procedure regarding minors and constitutional rights violations. My parents weren't criminally charged, but I filed for a permanent restraining order against them, citing emotional distress to my children and their role in enabling the false accusation. Blake tried to use his connections to make it all disappear. He called in favors, reached out to colleagues, tried to pressure the DA's office to drop the charges. But the evidence was too solid, the case too public. Local news had picked up the story. Prominent attorney accused of filing false report against nephew. His reputation was crumbling in real time. The trial for Wright came first. With all the evidence Walsh had compiled, it was brutal. The recording of Dylan's interrogation was played in court. The judge and jury heard my 10-year-old son's voice, scared and confused, insisting he didn't take the watch, while Wright and Blake pressed him to confess to something he didn't do. Wright tried to defend himself, claiming he followed protocol and had no reason to doubt Blake's story. But the violations were clear: failure to immediately notify parents, conducting an extended interrogation of a minor without counsel or parental presence, allowing a civilian, Blake, to coach the interrogation. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wright was sentenced to 3 years in prison, fired from the police force, and permanently barred from law enforcement. He was also ordered to pay Dylan $1.5 million in damages. I watched him cry in court when the sentence was read, his career and life destroyed by his own choices. Blake's trial was next, and if Wright's trial was brutal, Blake's was devastating. The evidence of the insurance claim combined with the false police report painted a picture of a man who'd either committed fraud or falsely accused a child to cover up his own mistake. The recording of him coaching Wright during Dylan's interrogation showed calculated cruelty toward his own nephew. Blake's lawyer tried everything: character witnesses talking about his community service, his successful law practice, his family. But none of that mattered against the recording of Dylan crying while Blake pressured officers to break him. The jury saw a powerful man using his position and connections to traumatize a child, and they weren't having it. Guilty on both charges. 4 years in prison, $500,000 in damages to Dylan, and permanent disbarment. His law firm shut down within a week of the verdict. All those connections he'd bragged about for years vanished overnight. Turns out when you're a disbarred attorney facing prison time, your professional network decides they never really knew you that well. I watched Blake break down in court when the disbarment was announced. All those years building his practice, his reputation, his network, gone. Nicole sat in the back row looking devastated, probably calculating how to support Austin and herself with Blake in prison and no income. Part of me felt bad for her and Austin. They hadn't done anything wrong, but Blake had made his choices, and his family would have to live with the consequences alongside him. My parents weren't criminally prosecuted, but the restraining order was granted. Permanent restriction preventing them from coming within 500 feet of me, Rachel, Dylan, or Sophie. No contact in any form. The judge was clear in his ruling. Their failure to protect their grandson and their subsequent attempts to intimidate us into dropping charges showed they posed a continued threat to my family's well-being. My mom cried in court when the order was read. My dad sat there looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I felt nothing. Maybe that makes me cold, but they'd chosen Blake over Dylan. They'd watched police take their 10-year-old grandson away and done nothing to stop it. That's not something you forgive just because they regret it now. After the trials, life slowly returned to normal. Dylan had some rough months. Nightmares about police, anxiety when he saw officers in public, trust issues that required working through with a counselor. But kids are resilient. With time and support, he healed. The nightmares faded. His smile came back. He joined his school soccer team and became one of their best players. Sophie came out of her shell more after we cut contact with my parents and Blake. Turns out she'd always felt uncomfortable around them, but couldn't articulate why. Kids sense things sometimes that adults miss. She's 8 now, more confident, actually talks and laughs during family dinners instead of sitting quietly. Removing the toxic family members gave her space to be herself. Rachel held our family together through all of it. She was the steady presence when I was consumed with rage and legal proceedings. She kept Dylan and Sophie's routines stable, made sure they felt safe and loved despite the chaos. I don't know what I did to deserve a partner like her, but I'm grateful every day. 2 years later, we're in a good place. Dylan's 12 now, thriving in school, star player on his soccer team. When I watch him play, I sometimes remember that scared 10-year-old in the police station and feel grateful he overcame it. Sophie's 8, still quieter than her brother but genuinely happy. She hasn't mentioned her grandparents once in 2 years, and I don't bring them up. As for my parents and Blake, I've blocked every form of contact. Other family members occasionally reach out, suggesting I should forgive and reconnect. Every time I either hang up or walk away. There's nothing to discuss. Some things can't be forgiven. When you let police handcuff and traumatize your 10-year-old grandson over a lie, you don't get to come back from that. Blake's serving his sentence, and from what I hear through the grapevine, prison hasn't been kind to an ex-lawyer. Wright's in a different facility, probably having an equally rough time as a former cop. Their choices destroyed their lives, and I don't lose sleep over it. My parents tried to show up at Dylan's school once, apparently thinking they could see him during recess. The school had been given copies of the restraining order and called me immediately. I called the police. They showed up and documented the violation. My parents haven't tried again since. Eventually, they'll understand that the relationship is over. They made their choice. They live with it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.